Ohayou gozaimasu. Thank you for joining us. Nice to see you. This is an incredibly, I think, important next step in Japan governance and actually in overall Japan's continued success. Japan has far too many companies that produce half the margins of the global peers. As a result, also, Japan, the market in general, and companies trade at half the multiples of many of their global peers. And that's, I think, partially a result of management not being ambitious enough, not trying to work hard enough, but most importantly, not being held accountable for their performance. And so, Kao, many of you remember, 15, 20 years ago, was a leader in saying, watch our EVA. They were going ahead and saying, watch our actual economic value add. Go ahead and watch our actual performance. And then they tried to do a magic trick. They tried to go ahead and said, they used to say, watch our actual economic performance. And then they said, oh, forget about that. Because their EVA, which had been going up, 2005, 2006, 2007, started going down and down and down and down and down and down. And then they changed some metrics and it's kind of flat and stabilized. But they've not done a good job in economic value add. They now want to turn around and say, oh, look at us around ESG. Actually, I don't think that that's their sustainable metric. I think they're missing enormous amount of parts on ESG of what they could be doing in ESG. But they're actually missing a large piece of the point of the most sustainable business is actually a business that produces profits, that produces easy for customers to get their profits, that has great points of sales, that's consistent on pricing, that goes ahead and has a positive working cash balance, right? And actually produces, and by producing profits for a long period of time, can raise wages for employees and produce simply a better company. And so we're here to talk about, we've tried to engage them. We prefer to work privately with companies. And instead of working privately with us, they've chosen effectively not to engage with us at all. I've had one meeting, despite being a top 5 shareholder, I've had one meeting with President Asebe. Disappointingly in that was scheduled for 45 minutes only. And disappointingly in that, there was only one fact cited, but we'll get to that later on. And so, by way of introduction, I'm not sure I need much of an introduction here, but by way of introduction, we've been engaging with Japanese companies for a very long period of time. I've been an investor here in Japan for over 30 years. We've had, fortunately, a lot of success in transforming companies to be better and to grow the pie for everybody. We think Kao is Japan's sleeping giant. Japan has, founded in 1890, Kao actually today has some of the best brands in the world. It has some of them in cosmetics and health and beauty products, and some of the best products in the world. And yet, they've fallen dramatically behind the global peers. And so people ask the question, why? They overspend in R&D, they dramatically underspend and underappreciate marketing, supply chain, and pricing policies. And so we think to help fix them, to help improve them, to help them make them more ambitious, to help them grow better, to help them grow more. Some of these fixes are very, very, very simple. Let's get them help. Let's make them more accountable, but let's get them help. So we've gone ahead at the upcoming AGM in March 21st, and we found and conducted a comprehensive search for 5 directors who can help them in each area that they need help in, just simply, not to be executives, so simply to go ahead and help provide guidance and supervision and can actually help the company grow. And so the skills they have can help transform Kao to be a global leader. They're completely independent. There's zero downside to not seeking them. We're not seeking to replace the incumbents. There's zero downside to taking them. They're all additive. We're not looking to replace any of the directors. We're not looking to replace Asebe-san. We're not looking to replace anybody. We're just saying, great, here's additional help. Let's be better. It's a constructive proposal. Instead, unfortunately, Kao has decided to fight back against us. These director candidates have fantastic skill sets. They've come from the leaders in FMCG products, in these products. They've had extensive, successful track record at these brands, growing these brands, working on each of their fields where they have explicit expertise. And these are the leading companies in the world: P&G, L'Oreal, Aesop, Estee Lauder, Wella, J&J, JTI, Mondelez. And they have that extensive experience. We looked for them after reviewing 223 different profiles, after interviewing 32 different people. We're looking for them for explicit skill sets. And so they each have strength in different fields: FMCG, supply chain, consumer marketing, cosmetics, health and beauty, finance and accounting, DX. And then, by the way, just for a fun note, in particular for you, right? For a fun note here, if you look at the skills matrix last year and this year, Kao magically added some skills they didn't have in the last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. So they try to tell us that they've added additional skills matrix, maybe because they were missing them on their chart, not in actual, but I'm not sure how they got all of a sudden finance, legal and risk, and kind of global experience. But they didn't have it in the past. Now all of a sudden they have it in this year's skill matrix. It's kind of part of the same game, unfortunately, that Kao continues to try to play on shareholders, on retail shareholders, on all of us, and trying to say, our performance is better. No, it's not. If you take out, your accounting performance is not better, right? If they say, we're ethical, no, it's not. You pay somebody to say you're ethical so they can't turn around and say you're ethical. You want to say, we have these skills. Well, if you have these skills, why have you not been using them to perform better? And so, by voting for these nominees, you're going to just simply help make the company better and bring them closer to their peer averages. We're going to add supply chain. They don't have it. They say they don't need it. You know what? That's funny, right? They say they don't need it. They don't even realize they need it. They say branding and consumer marketing. They don't even have a CMO, much less have a CMO on their board. Say finance and accounting, we don't need help there. They fundamentally misunderstand that finance and FMCG companies are a very distinct skill set. Pricing policy is a very distinct and important skill set. They don't even understand that they need it. That's part of the problem. That actually shows part of the problem. They talk about consumer goods and health and beauty products. You get somebody who specializes in brand focus and brand turnarounds for a long, long, long successful track record. They still are massively expanded in all these different brands. Let's focus on the winning brands. And talk about they have now, Asebe claims he has DX experience. If you have DX experience, why don't you go ahead and own your own brands? Own your own brand websites. By the way, why don't you do e-commerce on those websites like your leading competitors do? You know what? We could do, I could build one tonight It's simple. Why does everything go to My Kao, which goes ahead in Japan, actually, that has resonance, even though it might downgrade some of the higher quality brands because they think My Kao is a more mass market brand. But at least internationally, that doesn't work. Let's add some global experience and understand that if you want to get Biore, if you want to have some of these great brands, have those brands need their own website, an e-commerce website. That's easy. We could build it today. Why don't you even own your own websites? I know they don't own many of their websites. We'll show you slides later, because we've even gone out and bought some of them. They don't even own them. It's like a simple fix. And so we want, and we think it's important here, to have these directors on the board. They're going to add the independence, they're going to add to the gender diversity, and they're even going to lower the age of the board. So there's room for them on the board. Post having all of our directors and their director candidates, the board's simply going to be in line with their global peers. Kao wants to turn around right now and say, oh, well, we have an 8-person board to speed decision-making. If you're so speedy in decision-making, we haven't seen any speed there in decision-making at all. So that has not been an advantage. Let's add skills to give you an advantage. So we've also proposed aligning outside directors with compensation, both adding to the compensation so we can actually hire the directors and pay them. Let's also add stock to them so they can be aligned long-term with shareholders. And let's go ahead and align the inside directors with measurable compensation plan, as opposed to very generic compensation plan which says we're trying to make 1 billion people smile. Great, I'd love to make 1 billion people smile, but that's not measurable. Let's have measurable KPIs, of which Asebe said, oh, well, I don't like measurable things. He's really trying to say, I don't like to be held accountable. But instead, so we're going to hear next from Abe, who's going to turn around, Abe Pay Governance, who's designed a measurable compensation plan of organic growth, of ROIC, of other metrics, so we can go ahead and see the success and have targets for management to go ahead and say, if you don't know where you're trying to go, how are you going to get there? And so we're asking all of you here to go ahead and vote for all these proposals. Vote for the director candidates, vote for executive equity compensation, vote for the non-executive equity compensation, and vote to adjust the compensation limits so we can hire these directors. So currently, the company's report card is a failure in cosmetics and health and beauty. The key areas that both the company says they need to grow in and we think they can grow in. Fundamentally, we don't want to shrink any of the other businesses. We just want them to grow dramatically. We want them to grow dramatically internationally. Roughly 65% of the business in Japan. We don't want to shrink that at all. We want to continue. We would like to grow that. Their plan is remarkably unambitious, and the market shows very small growth, effectively almost like around the rate of inflation, but not at all gaining market share, and not even growing anywhere near what the market size continues to grow in. And so it's unambitious, but they've been failing in health and beauty, in cosmetics, in operational cash efficiency. Their working cash cycle is far out of line with all their peers, and it's very inefficient, and failing the digital strategy. They've done a bit better recently in hygiene and living care, but we think that's mainly the margin recovery is through improved pricing and raw materials to stabilize group profits. But we think we're at the limit, we think, of what they could actually raise pricing in. And in chemicals business, the improved spreads raise margins near cyclical peaks. So we think there's limited upside there. That's the only place they've been doing decently, and that's why most recent performance has been decent. And you know what? Great, I'm happy about decent performance. We're a top 5 shareholder. As a matter of fact, we own a lot more shares than any of the management. I own a lot more shares through our fund than any of the management. And they want to claim, the company wants to turn around and say, oh, well, we've been growing. Actually, and we've been growing in cosmetics. We've been growing in health and beauty products. Actually, if you look for real growth, it's actually been negative. If you take out the acquisitions they made in Bandai Sands, real growth has been negative. And so they're underperformed dramatically in ROIC, right? Return on invested capital. they lag the competitors dramatically, and consumer product margins far lower than all the global competitors. Let's raise that together by voting for these directives to help. The declining margins in health and beauty products, those margins should be fairly stable. They should be far, far higher. They've continued declining margins. The cosmetics is failing in key markets. They used to say, let's look at China. China's our growth engine, right? And then magically just now they went ahead and took out China and said, we got to look at our ex-China because China's failing. And they said, and we asked them, well, what about China? So China's really difficult. Oh, it's funny. China's really, really difficult. China's really actually a fairly good place for many of your competitors. It's a fine place for Estée Lauder. It's just really bad for you. So when you say China's really difficult, you mean China's really difficult for Kao, not China's really difficult for the cosmetics business in general. They underperform in R&D. I heard a quote just before with the Nikkei, who turned around and said, well, the company says to us, we're not going to compete in marketing because that's really hard. We're going to compete in R&D by making great products. Right? We're going to make great products and we're going to compete by spending in R&D. Right? And that's really a productive use. Actually, they're wrong. They spend a lot in R&D, but their return on R&D spend continues to decline. They spend double or more than their competitors do. They don't get a good return on it. So why are you going to go ahead and burn more money? They would say they're so friendly for ESG. Actually, burning money is not very ESG friendly either. And so they've failed to convert its incredibly large R&D spend into products that customers want to buy. Some of that's structural, and some of that's simply productivity. Meaning structural, meaning in many of the leading competitors, you go ahead and have R&D reporting to business lines, and your R&D sits on its own. Maybe that's part of the waste of money. But let's look at return on R&D. So that overspend in R&D is dramatic compared to everybody else. And stabilizing that cost would add 250 basis points of operating profits in Oasis estimates that normalizing these costs to the business size would have added 250 basis points of operating income to both divisions in 2023. They dramatically, as stated, underinvest in marketing. As we just discussed, they have lack of geographic diversification. You want to talk about risks for a business? Let's grow internationally. Let's grow in all these different markets. There's slides later of that just not in so many different markets. Let's grow internationally. It's going to de-risk the business in lots of ways. As I said, I don't want to shrink in Japan. I want to continue focusing on Japan. I want to focus on everything else too. So let's get them the help to go ahead and do that. Total shareholder returns are extraordinarily poor of all of Asebe's tenure. Look, stock's still down from when he became president. Everybody else has dramatically outperformed them in total shareholder returns. And you could look at ISS's recommendations that came out yesterday. Management is regularly overpromised and underdelivered. Continue to think about the Who song, like "Don't Be Fooled Again." Management, to some degree, has adopted and said, we're going to now focus on the things we put out in a Better Kao. We're now going to focus on a smaller degree of brands. We're now going to do some of these things. They promised this stuff in the past. We've not seen delivery. Let's get them help to get there. So total shareholder returns, underperformance of the index, underperforming their peers, like dramatic underperformance. Stock price remains depressed. They came out with a release in February, I think it's February 14th or so, trying to claim, the stock price is up since August 2023. They came out with a K27 plan. That's also basically when we've been, that also includes the entire period we've been public with our A Better Kao plan, which is clearly responsible for some of that. But let's take the time period since President Asebe became president. Right, over his entire tenure, the stock is down. His incredibly selective use of analyst opinions. They want to say, we believe it is due to Kao's strategic price increases. They quote two reports, one from JP Morgan. We appreciate Kao's steady improvements in cash and capital efficiency and expansion of core brands and market share, Well, what they actually say, if you read the rest of the JP Morgan reports, right? It says we see no signs of next generation growth business or other growth drivers, right? And they say it is highly uncertain what the growth drivers would be post restructuring just now in the same report that they quote. CLSA report says Kao has great technology and many interesting products, but management has yet to translate this expertise into strong revenue generating profits. Daiwa says earnings were weaker than we anticipated in health and beauty and care business. And SMBC Nikko, growth strategy for health and beauty care and cosmetics look a bit underwhelming based on fourth quarter and sales guidance. And so they're disconnected. Kao is not interested in competing globally. Hasebe-san says we want to be a company that is not compared to P&G and Unilever. Why not? Are you afraid of competition? Why not? You can be a great global leader. They've lost their focus. He's continually said numerous times, they're looking for another Kao effectively instead of a better Kao. They say, going forward, Kao will aim to be a company that contributes to minimizing the period of illness. You want to minimize the period of illness instead of focus on your great core brands you already have. They say we need a new engine for the future. Right? With this in mind, I want to enter the medical and treatment diagnostics field. What are we talking about here? Right? They go ahead and say we want to be a company that is not compared to P&G and Unilever. Kao says Kao conducts world-class enzyme research. I think enzyme-driven batteries would be useful in unexpected places. What are they doing? Now they're trying to invest in enzyme-driven batteries? You have everything you need. Let's just do a better job doing it. Kao, they think another Kao is intended to strengthen three categories: circular economy, digital, and healthcare. So now they're talking about, they have yet to translate this in general to revenue-generating products. They're not focusing on their core. They're kind of a bit confused and a bit all over. They don't understand their customers. President Hasebe said to me in the one meeting that I had with him that half of his customers are men. I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Half your customers are men? You sell cosmetics. You sell health and beauty products. What do you mean half your customers are men? How could that be possible? Maybe I misheard you. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe there's a mistake here. He said, no. More men are wearing makeup than ever before. And you know what? I agree. More men are wearing makeup than ever before. Are they wearing as much products? Do they have a 7-step facial routine every night? Are they, is it 95% of men, 95% of women are wearing makeup? And so we've gone ahead and said, look, I'm happy to share the data with you. And depending on product categories, between 63 and 88% of your customers are women. So do you not know, or do you not care, or you're not telling me the truth? I don't know which one. Maybe it's you don't know, but because I don't think you're actually focused on who your customers really are. It was remarkable. And so they abandoned their K25 plan halfway through. Their K27 plan, which they're on right now, lacks a growth story. Don't have to take my word for it. You can take that from surveys you've done of investors. You can take it from SMBC reports. You can take that from other domestic asset managers where we've got that, we've said it through surveys we've conducted. And you could see that all on our website, the entire survey. It's extraordinarily unambitious. This global sharp top plan lacks key metrics, has no group sales targets. And the ROIC they're targeting for is the lowest of their peer group of all their international FMCG companies for the last 5 years. So they can be a lot better. Generally, their 4 strategies are vague on the concrete actions and measurable milestones and metrics to be implemented and tracked to hit the modest goals and growth profits. And so investor confidence in the plan is low. Kao has said they're not interested in clear KPIs. Hasebe-san has said conventional numerical targets are easy to manage because the degree of achievement is clear. But I had long felt that they're not fit with Kao's culture, which values a clash of different qualities and challenges that we have fostered. Does anybody here understand that? Does anybody here think that's a great idea? Why don't we have clear and measurable targets? K27 already lags its global peers, right? So they're already not on path to hit it, even though that's already an unambitious target. Their growth drivers are not growing. International cosmetics, as we noted, are not growing. They're lagging all their peers' performances. And so you can see it right over here, right? Skincare itself, a field that you could ask the director candidates themselves of their experience, is growing dramatically. Their business is barely growing. They try to hide that through their acquisition of Bondi Sands. And so they're missing an opportunity. And all their great, phenomenal brands, Curel, Free Plus, Sensai, Kate, Molton Brown, Biore, Arbe, all these are high-margin, high-growth businesses. Let's focus on them. These are all great brands. They're recognized globally for their product quality, but they have limited global reach. This is the amount of countries they're in. So customers can't even get them. You could actually go on YouTube and go on Instagram and go on social media and find people like so excited about finding Biore. It's nice to see people who are super passionate about their products, but it'd be nicer to actually get them in their hands. So these brands have massively untapped potential. And so their forecasts are low. They're not even trying to kind of keep up with the business. So their desires are low. And their actual, to date, their actual revenue is extraordinarily small compared to the markets they're in and the competitors they're in. So they can gain both as the market continues to grow, but they could also gain dramatically market share simply by investing in all these key areas. And so brand by brand by brand, their margins are low, their sale points are low, their supply chain is failing. Right? But these are great brands that people love. Right? And so the brand awareness is dramatically low in key markets. Let's take their words for it. You hear Hasebe say, we're focusing on Thailand. And focusing on Thailand is great. But in Thailand, the brand awareness, we conducted a survey there after he told us that, brand awareness is extraordinarily low. Let's talk about Molton Brown. And Molton Brown is a very beloved brand that has the UK royal warrant holder, and I talked to President Hasebe about it. I said, great, what about Molton Brown? Like, why is Molton Brown in the last 5 years gone from 95 to 105 million pounds? That's in dollars, $135 million, basically roughly from 131 to $135 million. That's it, right? Well, Joe Malone went from something like 525 million to $1.46 billion. Well, ASAP, and you could ask one of the candidates who actually did that for ASAP, grew from something like a $130 million brand or $564 million of sales last year, and that's over 5 years, right? So the category is growing, and their competitors are growing, and he seems to be satisfied with virtually zero growth. And that virtually zero, and I asked him, why is that? Well, they focus on regular customers, consistent customers, regular buyers, and we like seasonal customers. I'm like, by the way, can't you have both? Can't you have, consistent customers? Like, we understand, and you could ask them, they're the experts. We understand, like Joe Malone goes ahead and creates an event all the time. Right, like it's Sakura season. Great, let's have fragrances Sakura season. It's the summertime. Let's have fragrances for that. It's the fall. Let's have fall fragrances. Right? You don't have to just focus on Christmas gifts. You can have that too. Right? But overwhelmingly, Molton Brown is only focused on Christmas sales. Orbe is dramatically untapped potential. You could ask one of the candidates here who competed directly with Orbe, right? And it has a cult following, a real cult following, but its social media following is dramatically small. Its awareness is dramatically small. And it's a great, great, great product, but they can increase those sales dramatically. And so we created this roadmap, we think, for Better Kao of focusing on these great brands, commit to global expansion, refine and define down your brand portfolio, embrace a marketing strategy, and strengthen your oversight and transparency. The market reacted positively to that. Some of the performance they're trying to claim from their performance is really the hope that everybody here is going to turn around and vote for this accountability, and the director's supervision is going to be able to help supervise management to achieving those goals. And so you can see here what analysts think, right? They believe the company has not yet performed well. They're not ambitious enough. The executive surveys are that the strategy is unambitious. Management has failed, has communicated distrust. Shareholders have communicated distrust towards management. The board lacks diversity, certainly lacks diversity in global experience, and the incentives are far outweighed to ESG. As noted, the ESG that they actually pay for through Ethisphere, like a company has a pay-for-play survey, but they're missing operating margin, total shareholder returns, free cash flow, conversion, operating profit growth, which are really important. So investors believe the strategy is completely incoherent. Right? They want to hear from management why we should expect the next step to be different. They want to see a board that has real diversity, and they want to see clear, demonstrable KPIs and incentives that are aligned with that. They need to make the evaluation of the process clearer, and not enough compensation is tied to stock price performance, and so they could do far better. Investors say we hear about abstract concepts, but we're not clear at all on specific initiatives. And we've heard from other shareholders that they believe the management team's abilities are extremely low, and they should bring in specialist personnel with knowledge of global business. And we've heard from investors, this is not our words, this is investor surveys from a third party, they're doing things in a half-hearted way. And so we've been trying to engage them. As we do in all cases, we try to engage the company privately. We go ahead and send them letters privately. We go ahead and send them another letter. We ask for meetings. We ask for another meeting. We ask for another meeting. We don't get this in this case. And so we go ahead and finally, after putting out a bettercow.com publicly, we have to wait 2 months to go ahead and get a 45-minute with Sebe and a 30-minute with Shinobi, the chairman. And then, we don't get anything out of that, except the only fact they get out of the meeting is that 50% of the customers are men, which, as demonstrated, is not. I don't believe it's true. We go ahead and then engage them privately to go ahead. We think we've identified these candidates. Please go ahead and nominate them. They go ahead instead and rush a nomination 2 months earlier than they've done for the last 10 years, a rush a nomination of 2 candidates of their own. No transparency in the process, no clarity in the process. They nominated one woman, Lisa McCallum, who's been an advisor for them for many, many, many years. We haven't seen much progress in advice she gives. She's been advising them in ESG. I don't know how all of a sudden she can advise them in marketing, which is what they talk about now. But they elevated her to the board. They nominated her to the board. And Sarah Casanova, by all accounts, has done a great job here. But her job has been managing McDonald's business in Japan. So in other words, selling burgers to Japanese customers. Great. It's very far different than selling health and beauty products to global customers. And so we're happy to have them all on the board. We value diversity of skill sets, but instead, they only went ahead and interviewed our candidates after they nominated their own. They interviewed only 2 out of the 5 members of the committee interviewed them. So not a robust process at all. Those 2 people did not have FMCG experience at all. And then they went ahead, announced publicly, rejected them wholeheartedly with effectively, I think, made up reasons or impossible kind of hoops to jump through. They think that all members of the board need to be CEOs. Since when is that? All leading companies in Japan don't have all the members of the board to be CEOs. And by the way, some of these candidates have managed 56,000 people. That sounds like a very senior, senior experience. Oh, they don't have all extensive FMCG experience. Yes, they do. The only people on those interviews who didn't have extensive FMCG experience is the people doing the interviewing. And so we think the board lacks the relevant experience. We think the board's far weaker than their peers in all the key areas in IT and DX, in finance and accounting and consumer marketing. As noted, they don't even have a CMO on their board, right? The outside directors lack real and recent overseas operational experience. Shinobe has none. Sakurai was regional president for Japan and Korea in 2020 and 2022. He really has no recent overseas management experience. Nishi-san was president of Ajinomoto do Brazil in 2015. World's changed a bit since then. Takashima was head of the Americas division of SMBC in 2014. That means he knows how to lend money in America to corporates. Right? That's not consumer, that's not FMCG, and that's very dated at this stage. Right? And it's a totally different approach to consumer when you're going ahead and reaching corporates than you're going ahead and approaching, consumers and customers. And Sarah Casanova was back in 2013, was a McDonald's managing director of McDonald's Malaysia and regional manager of McDonald's Singapore and Malaysia. Now, as noted, that's selling burgers. As noted, that's managing a licensee. That's very different than owning a brand where you control the brand. And that's a very different kind of, that's an in-person event of selling burgers. It's a very different approach entirely. And that's not experience to where their true growth markets can lie, both in the US and in Europe, and where the biggest addressable market share is. And so, unfortunately, the company has been closed to external refreshment. Some of the secret of others' success in this field have been simply hiring the expertise they need, of going out and hiring people who have experience in doing this at your competitors, who have experience going out and learn from them and integrate that. And I can learn how to be better. And the company themselves, not just on the board level, in the executive level, they failed to hire outsiders who have real independent views. They continue to go ahead and elevate or hire people who are former employees and bring them back. But they disclosed 7 new executive appointments to the executive group in 2024. None of these appointments were from outside of Kao. The closest to that, to an outside appointment, was that of Joe Workman, who was a retired Kao executive who rejoined the company. That's it. Everybody else brings in other expertise to learn. Kao fails to do that. And so, again, we want to go ahead and we'd like everybody to vote for all these proposals, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And these directors have that global experience. They have FMCG experience relevant to the company. They have global experience relevant to the company. And they're independent, and they've worked at some of the leading competitors in the world. And so these are additive skills to address to the board. We found them through a comprehensive and global search process. Hired 3 different search firms to do this. We didn't know any of them beforehand. I'm ecstatic to have gotten to know them. I continue to learn from them, all of them. But we didn't know them beforehand. We look forward to them being on the board and then them treating us like any other shareholder. So they're fully independent directors. Right? Kao has said that none of these candidates possess the relevant board and management experience, expertise, and engagement expected of companies' outside directors. What are you talking about? They said these candidates will not contribute to the effectiveness of the board and the enhancement of the corporate value. What are you talking about? These directors all have that specific expertise that the company needs. Right? They said within Oasis nominees is a former global head of supply chain at P&G. How can the board say that none of these candidates have relevant management experience? He managed, 56,000 people or more, right? They said Oasis nominees they said they have no expertise. Oasis nominees have over a century of experience and expertise in diverse fields within FMCG, as noted, peers of Kao. They said, actually, the board, they said that they don't have Japan experience. That's false. One of them actually lived in Japan for a while, but they ran global businesses, and you can ask all of them that question. One of them sat on a Japanese board. And so that also shows a lack of diligence in their own interview process. Unfortunately, that could have been clarified, and the directors, I think, all asked, let's have another meeting. Nothing. Let's discuss it. Nothing. They learned about their rejection, same time everybody here learned about their rejection, publicly on February 14th, same time I learned about it too. There was no communication. There was no transparency. There was no engagement. They failed on all those fronts. I've asked them, I've yet to hear an answer. By the way, please tell me, how did you fund your candidates? No transparency in that process either. One of them is a director on a JV partners of theirs, and one of them, as noted, has been an advisor to them for many, many years. And so they went ahead and ran us and tried to go ahead and said, oh, we already appointed directors. They made the director change in December. Every other year is noted, they always do it in February. They claim they did it because David Winners, a director and executive officer, retiring. That's funny, because last year, 2 people retired, and they didn't announce it earlier, and they didn't announce it in December. They only announced it in February. So they broke this is all a tactical process to try to not get help or refuse help. So they said they were interviewed, through a comprehensive and the comprehensive process. There's only 2 committee members in that, Sakurai-san and Shinobe, right, who do not have independent expertise. The company has failed to properly address the allegation that the board rushed the nomination process. The proposed election of 2 additional outside directors appeared to be a reactionary measure. That's ISS's words, not ours. And so these nominees, you're going to meet all of them, right, have direct and relevant experience. One of them in terms of supply chain, we want to go ahead and fix the cash conversion cycle. Kao is an outlier in being horrific at it. It takes 2 times as long as the next closest peer for goods to be paid for at Kao. Right? Let's just be more efficient at that. Right? And so there's a lot of room for the potential for working capital optimization. Right? There's a lot of room for them to go ahead and focus. Right? So SKUs actually have doubled, SKUs have doubled over the past 10 years. Right? So they could do a lot better here. Right? The growth in SKUs have weighed on supply chain, but revenue has not followed. In other words, something has to give. Either you need to fix the supply chain, or you need to focus on brands. And that's for the board to decide which one of those 2 strategies to take. But let's take one of them. Let's not just go ahead and increase SKUs because you're spending so much on R&D, but don't have the supply chain to support it. Right? And so, former president, in discussion with us, says there are too many SKUs, and I would say about 20% are not contributing to profitability or sales at all. Stop wasting and spending all this money on R&D. Let's go ahead and focus on the brands you have and make them great and make them real winners. So in terms of a marketing expert, we have Martha, right? And so she, from another interview with a former Kao brand manager, says there's not really people who are coming out of marketing and branding getting to the top ranks. As noted, there's no CMO on the board, but not only is there no CMO on the board, there's actually no CMO. And so marketing is downplayed at Kao. Hasebe-san himself said at the AGM last year, the company with the highest profits and the most repeat customers actually has high loyalty and uses almost no marketing fees in their business. He likes to sound grandiose, say, this may be a bit idealistic, but if you have an intensely researched product that, for example, that once is out there that can be used for a long time due to high loyalty, the marketing fees you will need would actually be only very small. I'm sorry, but you're selling lipstick, you're selling soap, selling health and beauty products, right? Lots of other brands these are key for an enormous amount of people's lives. Other brands that have real competitors who produce other products. Other brands as well have key to other lives. A lot of people have your phones out. These brands all spend an enormous amount of money on marketing, right? They have extensive brand loyalty, and yet they spend enormous amount of money on marketing. Marketing is extraordinarily important. It keeps it in the top. It keeps it from being dusty, as you say. It keeps it in tops of people's minds. And there's lots of innovative ways of doing it today, as you're talking about in social media. That's not done. There's like low-hanging fruit. You can do this cheaply and do it effectively. And so he's just choosing not even to try. Shelf space, point of sales is incredibly important. Right? Look what everybody else does to kind of see it in front of the customer when they show up at the store. And instead, Curel is relegated to like bottom shelf somewhere with poor signage and poor kind of catchability for your eye. Right? So the social media growth potential is enormous. Here's all their competitors in social media engagement. They're extraordinarily low. Right? The number of followers are just like 1/10, 1/20th, 1/30th less than their competitors. So the marketing for investing capacity is massive. Everybody else's growth has been massive. Their revenue has been massive. Their profitability is far higher. Malton's Brown's hasn't even gotten out of the starting gate. And so in terms of financial expertise, right? Margin potential growth is incredible. They lag their peers. That's why we need finance, FMCG finance expertise on the board. Right? Their operating margins have actually declined across all their consumer products segments in the last 4 years, while everybody else has grown. Right? They need a price to drive profitability. Right? Analysts and investors are excited by Kao's recent increases in prices for its products. However, 50% of pricing has been in fabric and home care, which represents less than 30% of consumer products revenues. Kao is not taking price in health and beauty and cosmetics, despite the segments constituting over half of consumer product sales, combined with the best overseas growth potentials. So they need to focus on both things, both on what the right price point is, which is extraordinarily important, because the message a price point sends is extraordinarily important. If it's too low, people think it's too cheap. If it's too high, you don't get enough customers. You need to find that right magic sweet spot for pricing. That's extraordinarily important to drive kind of sales and growth and profitability. But you also need to work on the availability and consistency. Sorry, consistency is also important. Consistency of pricing, because otherwise it's just confusing and not, discount is confusing the customer and downgrades the quality of product in the most important place, the mind space of consumers' heads, right? And so they're overly focused on promotions. You can see it here in a site visit we made in Thailand. And so they're inconsistent pricing of products, right? So this is really damaging to the brands. And so somebody with expertise in this would be incredibly helpful on the board to help them focus on it, right? And so and how do you raise pricing? You don't do it once, you do it slightly over time. And so this is another real, they say they don't need help here, they desperately need help. And that's all margin improvement. And so they've had lack of discipline in M&A. They went ahead and they overpaid for Bandai Sands. And so that's not our words for it. That's a lot of financial analysts' words for it. It's a lot of the financial press words for it. And actually, maybe they were buying growth, but let's focus on what you can achieve through organic growth. So there were lots of questions about it. Margins were declining, and despite that, they went ahead and did that. Let's transform their brands. We have a brand transformation expert here. And so they have far too many brands, right? That's their own admission on it, but yet they have yet to focus on it, and they've yet to have a track record of doing that. P&G, Beiersdorf, L'Oreal, all has focus on their brands, right? Beiersdorf, consumer business, is around the same size as Kao by revenue, but it's just 13 brands. You can see where they are. The Kao is far higher in terms of number of brands, but not at all succeeding in terms of number of brands, not at all succeeding to generate revenue out of those brands. They failed to manage dramatically their portfolio. They said back in 2021, we would consider divesting of brands and products that generate 5 billion yen or less in sales, that have a profit margin less than 15%, and that have no growth potential. We aim to complete the selection process in 1 or 2 years. Where is it? Why have they not done it? Hence, the replaying of that song in my head, Don't Be Fooled Again. They said in 2021, you know what? I'm all for giving people a chance. I'm all for let's see. Let's see. Great. You're going to adopt the plan? Great. They say now we're going to go ahead and focus? Great. You said that before. right? As they say, like first time, shame on you, second time, shame on me. I think that can be said for all of us here. First time, great, we'll give you a chance. You didn't do it. So let's add some additional board members who can hold them accountable to it. So there are different approaches. Unilever has 30 power brands. We could ask people who've worked with those power brands, right? But Oasis estimates that in the health and beauty products, they have 9 face and body care brands, right? Posted about 180 billion yen of revenue in 2023. Biore and Jergens themselves are 160 billion yen of it, right? And so they can go ahead, right, and really do a lot better job of focusing. It won't hurt profitability. It add to profitability. It add the margins dramatically. Right? So why don't you go ahead and focus on Biore and Jergens instead of all these different brands that are just simply a distraction. I bet many of you can't even spot the brands, don't recognize the brands here, or spot them on a shelf. So let's focus on DX expertise, right? DX expertise, as pointed out, right? It's strange and inconsistent to go ahead and focus on and not have your own websites and e-commerce sites, and why it all goes to Kao. Kao, as noted, doesn't have mind share or mind space in the foreign customers, right? Everybody else primarily have their own e-commerce sites, right, that thrive. So why are we being cheap with creating another website? Right? It's a very disappointing consumer experience, and that's why there's a much higher bounce rate from the website. People don't even know why they got the Kao. That's why there's a lot lower of conversion rate on the website, and that's why their e-commerce profitability is so low. Right? It's like 1/4 to 1/5 to 1/6 of their competitors in terms of what they're doing in e-commerce. And so the digital strategy is very poor. They're paying for ads effectively on Google and other search engines is extraordinarily low. Their visibility is poor. And so we'd like to change that. Let's get them digital expertise. Hasebi likes to say, I have the digital expertise. If you have the digital expertise, why have you not used it? Here's your opportunity to get somebody on the board to help you with it, to help evaluate and guide your DX strategy. And so, as noted, they don't even own their own websites. You can go right now in your laptops and see they're for sale. So we bought one as a gift for Kao. I'm asking for a meeting to go ahead and give it to them. And so the brand experience is very inconsistent across brands. Some of them have a strong presence on YouTube, and some of them do not at all. What's going on here? Why don't we have somebody who can help manage at least that everybody's doing things and as a process. So let's make sure we're on all the different social media platforms. Let's make sure we're executing here. So they have lack of digital channel integration, right? Kao's brands lag dramatically, as noted, in their audiences. Look at the small number of followers. Jergens have 132,000 followers. The direct competitor of Dove has 1 million, right? So, as noted, their competitors have 10, 20, 30 times the number of social media followers, right? Same thing for Molton Brown. Molton Brown's 158,000. ASAP is 1.2 million, right? So let's go ahead and revise the compensation for outside directors, right? That's simple. That's simple because there's a cap. So if you're going to add directors, you got to have an add. You got to add to the cap, right? Let's give stock grants to the directors, right? Let's go ahead and align them for long term. One critique about that, people say, is, if you're going to give them stock grants, they might not be fully independent. Well, actually, I think if there was full, honest independence on the board, they would have held management accountable to start with. But furthermore, the bigger test is if they give them a currency, give them cash or you can give them stock. Right? If you're beholden upon the cash, maybe it's a significant part of your income. You also don't want to stand up and speak up and say something against the board, right? Because you're afraid of losing this significant part of income that's going to help put food on the table. So stock, at least given and invested over a long period of time, aligns everybody's interests, right? And I think in general, management and the board could own a lot more stock. They own right now very, very, very little stock. Dilution is extraordinarily low. We're not talking about excessive numbers at all. The shareholding of the current board is quite low. And so let's add to the incentive plan. We'll have Abe-san in a minute come up here and talk about it. But right now it's extraordinarily variable. They have ESG is 28%, which we said is part of that input there is through Ethisphere, where they pay for a company that go ahead and says they have good ESG. They've gotten it for 18 years. That's quite remarkable. But it's actually also remarkable that Ethisphere goes ahead and says the companies that make landmines and make military drones and make other military equipment and have other companies that have huge scandals accounting-wise or consumer-wise or hurt customers and consumers in various ways are also ethical because you pay Ethisphere $8,000 and they turn around and say you're ethical. Right? That's how it works. You can go ahead and online and see there's lots of investigations into Ethisphere's kind of pay-for-play system. And so this is all there's not measurable business growth, ESG or management activities. It's very broad, and a large piece of it is fixed compensation. So it's not sufficiently performance-based. That's by others. We said that and voted against it last year. And so there's a remarkable low amount of stock ownership. One good measure would be to have stock ownership after being president for years of 2, 3, 4 times your total compensation. So you can have long-term incentives aligned. That doesn't exist here at all. You see how low the shareholdings are. Even Lisa, for that matter, Lisa McCallum, who's been a long-term advisor to the company, now nominated to the board. You know how many shares she owns? 0. So let's add to that. Let's make sure that they all have long-term alignments. Maybe they actually don't even believe in the company, and that's part of the problems. So here, this is more about Ethisphere, but I encourage all of you to go ahead and actually and go online and ask, is Ethisphere ethical? And what the ethics of Ethisphere are. And you can read some great articles on it. But they like to highlight it. They like to go ahead and kind of celebrate it. And actually Lisa McCallum has gone ahead and done that on her own social media followers. This is a great achievement. It's a great achievement when you pay somebody $8,000 and they give you a reward for it. So I beg to differ, right? Here you see here in the Guardian, the LA Times, and other places, the dubious ethics of the world's most ethical companies. Right? The LA Times says, the ethics of firms paying to be honored for ethics. Right? Or Chris McDonald says, a former member of Ethics Advisory Panel, such awards should be taken with a pinch of salt. Maybe more than just a pinch of salt. So we want to put forward an executive compensation plan that is pay plan oriented toward long-term value, linked to performance, based upon quantifiable targets, metrics distinguish business segments, metrics to prioritize based on value creation, metrics cannot compensate for each other, TSR is assessed relative to global peers like companies like Hitachi, like the leading companies in Japan, ESG metrics to be clearly defined, designated with shareholder input, designated by a leader in the field, and transparent disclosure for shareholders. We want to align executives with growth. And so that's the plan that Abe will talk about in 1 minute. And we want to weight all of these areas appropriately. So all of us can share in Kao's speedy return to financial health. Our proposal puts far more emphasis on tangible operating performance and rewards based on long-term benchmarks being met. And so that's what everybody else does. And I think that's what would happen in a Better Kao. And so I'd like to go ahead, I'd like to ask everybody, who expect more of Kao to help go ahead and vet and vote for these proposals, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's consistent clearly with what the Japan Corporate Governance Code wants. It's consistent with our duties as stewards of capital. And let's go ahead. We expect better of the company. There's a lack of urgency to achieve strategic focus. There's poor development of the executive team. There's poor incentive alignments. And there's room for them on the board. These skills are all additives. Please vote for them. And let's go ahead and welcome Abe from Pay Governance to go ahead and talk about, if he can, the pay plan that he designed and why pay plan, what is the modern technology in pay plans in general, globally and in Japan, why these are important, how they achieve better performance, and why we should go ahead and actually, and why in this case, I'll add later, why it's important for Kao. So thank you for your note.
Hello
everyone, I'm Naohiko Abe from Pay Governance. I provide consulting for executive compensation system, so I will speak for the next 30 minutes. And so Japanese companies, what Japanese companies can learn from the executive compensation system from Western companies, so in FMCG. So the top half, the 3 pie charts, are the compensation from the U.S. FMCG CEO. The bottom is the FMCG CEO compensation. Then the green is fixed pay. And next is annual bonus. And light gray is long-term incentive. Mainly this is stock incentives. So this is linked with mid to long-term shareholder value. Let's take a look one by one. P&G, 74% of CEO compensation is LTI. In case of Coca-Cola, 67% from LTI. PepsiCo, 75%. In general, U.S. companies have higher portion of long-term incentives. Next, let's take a look at the European companies. Nestle, 38% of the CEO compensation is LTI. L'Oreal, 50%. Unilever, 43%. In the past, before financial crisis, in Europe, maybe the balance between these 3 elements was 1 to 1 to 1. But they learned lessons from the financial crisis, and they increased the portion of the compensation linked with the mid to long-term shareholder value. So L'Oreal, LTI is 50%. So most of the companies in stocks, so they have more than 50% LTI in the CEO compensation. And in the US, about 70 to 80% is LTI for the CTO's compensation mix. And my message here is, so the main portion of the CEO compensation is LTI. This is not unique to FMCG. Large corporations show a similar trend. And especially like a GAFAM, like quickly growing companies. So they put more emphasis on the long-time incentive. Next. So let's take a look at the further breakdown of the long-term incentives. So we have base salary, annual bonus, and then next column, RSU, and the one next to it, PSU. So these schemes are used for these FMCG companies, but the RSU, based on the past 3 years performance, and then and the condition is the length of tenure, and the right is vested based on that. And for the PSU, this is performance share unit. This is a short for performance share unit. So we set the performance target, and that is given to the stocks. So when the targets are achieved, then this person, the executive, can get the right. So LTI total is a total of RSU and PSU. And other than P&G, all other companies than P&G. So PSU, only PSU is the LTI. And in Europe, RSU without the linkage with performance. So the European companies do not use RSU. And in case of US, S&P 500 companies, CEO of those companies, of LTI, about 20 to 30% is RSU, and the rest is PSU linked with the performance.
Then why RSU is provided from the shareholders? You may have some worries and questions. That would be about 6 to 10 times of the base salary by having the shares, so that the alignment can be heightened between the management and shareholders, and it had certain effect. In that sense, RSU is often used in the US companies. And then talking about the share compensation system, there is a burn rate, and every year a certain percent of the shares issued are given to CEO or the managing director and executive officers, sometimes including employees. If we look at that ratio, there's no slide, sorry, but for the P&G, 0.77% every year, and Coca-Cola, 0.36, and PepsiCo, 0.8, and Nestle, 0.1, and L'Oreal, 0.22, and Unilever, 0.18. Therefore, as you have seen earlier, this is compensation mix in the US, which is more aggressive. It seems to be more aggressive, but CXO or the management beneath them, the same story can be applied to. So therefore, long-term shares are granted to this management as well as to employees in some cases. Therefore, the burn rate is higher in these cases. And I mentioned earlier, PSU is at the center of LTI, and then looking at FMCG companies, what kind of KPIs are used, and how many KPIs are there, and then what is the weight. So that is summarized in this chart. The finance and as market the indicators, PSR, so what kind of KPIs are used, and the non-financial ESG is usually often used, and then how it is used by different companies. And if you look at the P&G, the sales and operating profits, EPS, and the operating cash flow, they use 4 indicators, and ESG, it is not included in CFO compensation. And Coca-Cola, the 30% in sales, 30% in EPS, the operating cash flow 30%, and the 10% for ESG. And looking at the European companies, L'Oreal, sales 40%, operating profit 40%, and the remaining 20% is related to ESG. So that is how they weigh. And Nestle, EPS and ROIC and RTSR, so relative TSR, so the assumed competitors, compared with 10 to 20 competitors, and then looking at the position for the past 3 years, RTSR, and if it is in the middle of that rank, that will be provided. And tech companies which required high growth, the target is TSR performance 50%, then 100% is granted. Therefore, they tend to be higher, 55 to 60%, and Apple, the top when you in the top 30%, the target is considered to be met. So RTSR, particularly for the high-growing, fast-growing companies, is using. And Nestle, PepsiCo, and the Unilever also use these financials. And 20, 34, 30% respectively for Nestle and Pepsi, Unilever, which is called RTSR in the industry. Looking at the rightmost part, the column, then how many KPIs are used in these companies? P&G, 4 KPIs, Coca-Cola, 4, L'Oreal, 3, Nestle, 4, Unilever, 4, and PepsiCo, 3. Excluding ESG, usually 2 to 3 KPIs are used, and then when the company use ESG, they would have 1 addition. So therefore, generally speaking, there are 3 to 4 KPIs in these companies. So instead of having a lot of KPIs, of course, you have a lot of different strategic goals, but you have to prioritize these goals and then limit the number of KPIs and then giving the different weights. So this is what the general companies are doing. When you drive a car, usually when you drive on the free highway and then looking at the speed meter and then other the instruments, you need to have a lot of instruments, but if you drive at a lower speed, you need to have a lot of different information. But in the case of the Formula One, what you need is only the meter and the information from the pit. You don't even need a speed meter. Therefore, CEO of these companies just have a very narrow focus in certain areas, and then the management style is at a very high speed so that they would use a limited number of KPIs. And this shows looking at the Japanese CEO compensations in comparison. This page summarizes that information. And here, for the past 5 years, topics 100 executive compensation trends are summarized. Rightmost one is called TDC. This is base salary and STI and LTI combined. And then 5 years ago, 190 million yen, and then FY23, 326 million yen. It means that the addition of more than 100 million yen between these periods. And then looking at the factors for the growth, please pay attention to STI. 5 years ago, CEO, the compensation at the center is 54 million. But in the recent years, 96 million. And then looking at the LTI, 5 years ago, 45 million. And then it doubled to 80 million. Therefore, in the governance code, these are related to the performance, and then the ratio of the shares should be heightened under the guidelines. This compensation increased, and then the ratio linked to the performance seems to be higher on the surface. And then this one is supposing the base salary 1, and then STI, and then LTI's proportion are shown in 2019, 1 to 0.96.8, 0.8. Sorry, the fiscal year is wrong. Currently, 1:1:1. That is the general ratio between the base pay, STI, LTI, the ratio 1:1:1. This is the compensation mix of the European companies 10 years ago. And then companies started to have a compensation committee and then chaired by the outside director. And then the majority should be the outside directors. This is the composition. And then looking at the CEO 1:1:1, and then the 66% of the total is linked to the performance. And then the others are related to the shares. Therefore, mid to long term, the shareholders' values, whether it is linked with the compensation. This is the results of this test. And looking at the rightmost chart, the vertical is the delta TDC, and then for 3 years change is shown. And then on the right side is the 3-year TSR. And then looking at the plots, you see the situation of different companies. The finance, probably many of you are finance experts, but looking at the correlation on the right top, minus 0.03. So the compensation change and the TSR has no correlationship. And in the middle, the EBITDA, it's the same, and EPS, again, the same. Therefore, unfortunately, the compensation reform is just a formality, and it doesn't have any specific effect. For example, by having a higher TSR, compensation is not increased. So there is no correlations. EPS 3 years, the correlation was just 0.14, and then EBITDA 0.23. So we want to have a kind of a 0.6 or something like that. And then the mid to long-term shareholders, the value should be linked to the business performance. This is usually stipulated under the guidelines, but actually it is not achieved. Then how we can solve this issue? And then there are several points shown here. The compensation should be linked with the increase of the mid to long-term shareholders' values. So this should be the one of the philosophy of the compensation. And the companies in Europe and the US, the engagement between the compensation and with shareholders, and particularly PSU is focused. The long-term shareholders' values to be linked with compensation. So long-term, the shareholders' values and the KPI and the target should have a higher weight. And I'd like to share some of the important points. The first one is to have the KPIs centered on financial indicators that can be clearly linked to shareholder value. In other words, you have the Japanese companies often have the strategic the targets, but in many cases, even if you achieve that, it is not linked to the long-term shareholder value or compensation. Therefore, that's such a qualitative the target is not recognized by European companies. And then looking at the number of KPIs compared to the FMCG best practices, financials 2 to 3 KPIs are good, and then you should have a driving in the F1 race. And then third point is for financials, the qualitative indicator is used. Therefore, you have to have the smaller weight if you want to introduce that. And Japanese companies are very serious, and then they want to have more the comprehensive targets, and as a result, they would have 10 to 20 targets. And the qualitative targets, ESG, and strategic targets, they tend to have more targets. But at least for the management compensation, of course, we don't deny the ESG activities, but the weight should be made smaller, and then that should serve as a reminder for the management. And then I talked about the ESG not included in PSR, but the annual the pay it has a 10%. And in the area, the proportion of the D&I was also set, but because of the changing environment, some activists against ESG have some threat. Therefore, the companies no longer have that kind of the targets. This is one information I like to share. And then when the targets are set, and then looking at the financial targets in a limited number, the first, probably this should be the role of CFO. You should have the consensus from the market and looking at other factors, and then the target is valid or not, and looking at the capital cost and the others should be considered carefully, and then whether that is in line with the expectation with shareholders.
目標を設定して目標達成したっていうのはこの報酬ガバナンスに
So it is not the case for the practice of compensation if you have a lax target and achieving it. And maybe there are many targets set that is easily achieved, and then by that a compensation to some level is paid, and there is no correlation with the TSR or others, and that is also happening with EPS and other key indicators. And the other thing is, when it is over beyond the target, the compensation should be paid more, and when it is under, you should be compensating the directors lower. So that is the policy of the incentive payment compensation. That's a philosophy. However, thinking about the efforts made, and even though the target is not achieved, the companies may try to pay the compensation as defined. Therefore, there's many cases in Japan that there is not a design for compensation decline according to the condition or increase of the compensation according to the results. And currently, the compensation committee has been working to check from number 1 to number 5, and then start selecting a KPI strictly and set a KPI. And if there should be an achievement, there's going to be a full compensation. And if there should be not aligning to the achievement, I think that part, there's a question whether the committee, the compensation committee, has not played part. And within Western companies, these people are structured by independent directors. For instance, committee members or committee chair has a high knowledge of finance, or they have experiences as high performer, and by having them appointed, they are to practice high payment. And in some cases, they might have to make high decisions in order not to pay the compensations to the directors. And number 7, so the directors who does not have a full knowledge of the finances, they they might have some possibility that they could hinder their evaluations on the business achievement, therefore should not be appointed as a committee members. And there's many cases that CEOs and other peoples are included within the compensation committee. But then if you are to just define your compensation yourselves, it's just true and normal that you tend to set your salary higher. And of course, that happens too. So, but the target of the governance is to have to avoid the COI, therefore not appoint these people into the compensation committee. Therefore, having CEOs within the member of the compensation committee, that is going to be a big hindrance. And then the engagement of the members and the member head of the compensation committee is very much appreciated. So from number 1 to number 9, everything that has been discussed within the compensation committee, it is all too natural that it should be discussed internally and then have a transparency to be disclosed, and that is normal in the Western world. So this is to be disclosed to the public, and then it's going to be explained to the stockholders. However, pay on say, there's no system like that in Japan. So once an institutional system is approved at the stockholders meeting and to operate at the stockholders meeting, the shareholders side is difficult to refute. And within that condition, how are we going to be moving forward to progress? So first of all, we must be strengthening the engagement, and then pay on pay. We have to be thinking about the revamping of the pay on pay. So the achievement and the compensation may not be linked as a performance. And then for the longer time, in order to have shareholders' rights, we have to be correcting the incentives, and we think we need to take that actions. And that is all from my side. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We're going to do two things right now. I want to go ahead and introduce the directors all to you, give them a chance to introduce themselves, and then we're going to break. Everybody will get their bento boxes, and then an opportunity to interview them, and you'll all have an opportunity to ask them questions. So maybe I will start with you, Danin. Can you come up and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Seth. Hello, everybody. My name is Hugh Deneen, and I'm a Senior General Management Global Brand Marketing Transformation expert and also a public board director. I look forward to contributing to the Kao board. I believe I can contribute significantly. I've competed directly with Kao across virtually their entire portfolio in over 100 countries around the world in the areas of global brand marketing, strategic transformation of portfolios. I've personally led transformation of portfolios as large as 300 brands across companies like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Avon Products, Hostess Brands, and most recently, I was president and global chief marketing officer for the Wella Beauty Company, which is a hair care and beauty expert that competes directly with Kao. I was responsible for turning around a large portfolio of brands at the Wella Company, and I believe that there's a significantly brighter future ahead for Kao with some changes in how they look at their portfolio of brands, focusing on a fewer group of brands that matter most. Same is true for markets. There's a significant underdevelopment in many markets around the world, and the same for channel. Quite simply, Kao should be more available than they are today in best in class. And with that, Kao's performance can change. and be much more in line with its peer set. So I look forward to working with Kao's board, understanding them, and having more significant contributions than they're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anya, Rodney? Thanks, Anya.
Hello, my name is Anya Lagotny, and I have worked 20 years in the consumer category to help global consumer brands grow by leveraging digital transformation as a true competitive advantage. I had the opportunity to work at companies such as Nestlé, Microsoft, Mondelez International, Carlsberg Group, and JT International. And I have always worked at the intersection of technology and business strategy. At my time as Chief Digital Officer and also member of the board of directors at JT International, I led a company-wide digital transformation and delivered an accelerated response to a disruption the company was facing at that time. So protecting their revenue streams, but also improving their efficiencies. The interesting part in this story is two things I wanted to mention. So first of all, a key factor to success was to align the Japanese headquarters with the international business. So bridging these two different operational and governance models. So that was a really big factor of success. And the other thing important to notice in this case, when I joined as Chief Digital Officer, I was told the company has a digital strategy. But unfortunately, it was not really delivering what it was supposed to deliver. And why was that? Because there were hundreds of pilots run across the company on digital, but they were focused on technology. And all these pilots were fun, unrelated to the business strategy, and none of it was scalable. So I think this is something I have come across many times whenever I started. I'm being told, oh, we have a strategy. But as soon as you go under the surface, you discover there's more. I wanted to tell you that today I work as a board advisor, and I'm helping boards but also executives really navigate the digital and AI transformation, because I think AI is also a big topic boards need to be concerned with today. I'm also the chair of the international chapter at the Swiss Board Foundation. So this is the Swiss board governance organization with over 2,500 members. And I'm an executive in residence at IMD Business School in Lausanne. So I provide guest lectures, and I also provide articles or help write, provide content for books the professors might want to write. And I think one thing that I find really important is digital transformation. I think it became this catch-all phrase over the last 10 years. Some companies even think they do digital transformation by implementing a new software. That's a shame, because really digital is changing how consumers engage. It's changing how brands differentiate. And it's even changing how supply chain operates. So digital is a key strategic lever, not just an operational update the board needs to receive. And I have launched a global ECRM program across Nestlé brands 20 years ago. So think about Nestlé Baby and all the different programs. That was the foundation, because they needed the foresight to think about data. I have created the global strategy e-commerce for Mondelez International. That was early 2010-ish, 12-ish. In this time around, we were very ambitious, 1 billion by 2020. That sounded really big, because e-commerce was viewed as being very small. And also, when you look at Carlsberg Group, driving their growth story with really focusing on digital marketing, social media, innovation, and supply chain transformation. So for me, elevating and having the opportunity, helping Kao to elevate digital to a strategic level and helping in all this different area, I would be delighted to do so. And I think I would be able to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lanchi Venator. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lanchi Venator, and I'm very happy to be here today. I have more than 25 years of experience in consumer products, and specifically 15 years in beauty. I've had the honor of working with many wonderful companies. I spent 5 years as a consultant after business school, where I focused on consumer products, advising big companies, working with companies, solving their problems. And then I joined industry and went to American Express. Then I went over and joined Avon Products as the head of strategy for their North America region. And then eventually joined Estee Lauder Companies, where I spent a little over 10 years working in various positions in finance at Lauder. I was the person that they hired to build their pricing capability back in 2012. And so before that, it was really just an initiative. When I joined, my remit was to build out the capability. That included building out the process, working with all the 30 brands in the portfolio around the world to put in infrastructure, to hire the team, to train the team, and eventually the pricing capability at Lauder, and I'm really hoping that this will also be results for Kao, delivered about a third of the profits for Lauder. And year over year, you can count on 2 to 4% of growth. If you do pricing correctly, you can count on 2 to 4% of growth. And it's not just, we think of pricing not as a peanut butter spread, so everybody takes 2% up or everybody takes 3% up. But it's really very strategic. And we typically do a 3-year plan, not just a 1-year plan. And then we slowly, over the 3 years, we'll execute year 1 and then we push it out. So as Seth said earlier, you can't take it all in one shot, and that's where the art of pricing comes in. It's not every product, every brand, every market. It's surgical, and it depends on the value proposition of the brand. And that's why finance in consumer products is a little different than finance in financial services, which I also had the honor of working for, American Express, which is a very financial services-driven company. What else can I tell you? I am very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the panel so that you can ask any questions you like. The last job I had before I became an advisor was the CFO for KFC. It is, I think you might know it here in Japan. It is a division of Yum Brands, and I would say I was proud of the achievement I had when I was at KFC. The year I joined, the last quarter, surprise, at the end of the year, we had a lot of boycotts for the brand because it was an American brand. And despite the boycott and the surprise at the end of the year, I managed to work with my 14 business units and the CFOs around the world, and we were still able, through disciplined management of our cost, no cost cutting, just discipline, and that's prioritizing how we spend our money, prioritizing what projects we could spend it on this year or next year. We over-exceeded the profit goals that were given to us. So I am very much looking forward to working with Kao to sharpen Kao's financial framework and to infuse some aspiration into Kao's growth algorithm. Thank you.
Thank you. Marta Blando. Thank you.
Seth. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Marta Velando, and I have over 25 years of experience building some of the most iconic and loved brands in beauty and personal care. To name a few, Aesop, Kiehl's, Lancôme, Yves Saint Laurent, Victoria's Secret, and I can keep going on and on and on. I am really excited about the opportunity to work collaboratively with the Kao board to transform the portfolio of strong brands into iconic, loved brands, that not only deliver on technical and functional benefits for consumers, but that actually create a strong bond at the emotional level. Love brands are brands that are preferred by retailers, preferred by consumers, are brands that can command price premiums, are brands that not only meet consumer expectations, but also exceed them. I have experience working for world-class organizations like Procter & Gamble, L'Oreal, Coty, in which I have competed with Kao brands. So I'm really looking forward to leveraging my expertise in a collaborative way with my colleagues and the Kao board to really realize the vast potential that Kao brands have around the world. I am really motivated by the Kao purpose and mission, which is to improve consumers' life while taking good care of our planet and the health of our planet. So I really look forward to being able to contribute to that mission while generating profitable growth and share and value for all the shareholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha. Yannis Skoufalos. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning from me too. I am Yannis Skoufalos, and I have had the honor and pleasure of working at P&G for 35 years. The last 10 of those 35 years, it has been leading their global supply chain network. And if you allow me a minute, their global supply network was going all the way from the marketplace, whether you were serving Walmart or Arata here in Japan, or the distributors in Africa, all the way to 110 manufacturing sites, 3 of which in this great land, namely Shiga, Akashi, Takasaki, as well as a spend pool of $48 billion every year. I'm actually very glad that Mr. Abe spoke about the long-term incentive plan just before us. The entire supply chain organization at P&G for 35 years, and in my tenure, it was connected and hardwired revenue, margin, free cash flow, and dare I say, sustainability too. I merely refer to that, if only because I believe these elements are instrumental for the future of us getting global Kao being better and winning in the marketplace. Absolutely instrumental. Therefore, I would like you to think the supply network as a true enabler, a sustainable and demonstrative competitive advantage in the marketplace for any company in the world of today that wants to win and win big. Beyond my 35 years at P&G, I have spent the last 5 years as a senior advisor to Blackstone, embedded in their operations. And I have the honor of serving in 3 different boards, 2 of which are public, namely Sandoz Pharmaceuticals of Switzerland, EMEA of Canada, and I'm on a board of a company called Sustana, which is a privately owned company at Blackstone. If I can leave you just before lunch, it will be a sheer honor if voted to serve Kao, to serve its shareholders and stakeholders, and I truly look forward to an engagement with you after lunch. Thank you so much.
Dennis, thank you so much.
Okay, then I will mix Japanese and English. So I'm Matsumoto from Manex Group. Thank you. I'm not from Oasis, and I am not from Kao either. So this proposal. So I would like to ask a question to better understand what they can contribute.
Oh, I'm just an individual. I'm interested in how you could contribute to Japan society and also to Kao's shareholders. So from that point, I'd like to make some questions to those ladies and gentlemen. Okay, まず最初に
First of all, earlier we had self-introduction of the 5 candidates. And how do you understand the current situation of Kao, and then what kind of contribution do you think you can make to Kao? So this is an important point. So.
What is your view of the most challenging, the most important challenges to Kao, facing Kao, and how you think that you can contribute to tackle with the challenges for Kao? Okay.
I'll be glad to go first. I view literally 3 significant challenges, rather, should I use the word opportunities for Kao. I think you've heard them from Seth quite elaborately, but I will sum them up along the total shareholder return measures. Revenue, margin and earnings accretion, free cash flow generation. I think they are wonderful opportunities. I could see globalization of some of the great brands of Kao, increasing the revenue growth at least into high single-digit numbers. I can see a very significant productivity and structural cost savings plan becoming a margin accretion rather than a margin dilution. I believe that as we have delivered at places like Procter & Gamble and many other multinationals, in the world of today, there are opportunities for 4 to 5% year-on-year structural cost savings. Savings that they become enabler and the fuel to drive the globalization and the revenue growth of the companies. Now, at the same time, if you do not work on the working capital, and namely free cash flow generation, it's extremely difficult to be able to fund this global expansion. So there I use the 4 measures of working capital: capital effectiveness, inventory reductions, days payable, days sales outstanding. They become, again, the enablers to how you generate cash that in itself you can drive it to growth. So I see those 3 total shareholder returns as huge opportunities, and at the same time you will allow me to add the 4th one, which I believe the sustainability and the ESG program, when embedded in the brand equities that my colleagues can talk better than me, is good from the country, is good for the business, is good for the globe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Yeah.
Building on what my colleague has shared, I also see 3 opportunities, I would say, rather than challenges. The first one being the globalization of the brands. I think Kao has a very strong portfolio of brands, but I think they have a huge potential to become global icons. There are some brands that are very strong in Japan, in the domestic market, which is fantastic. There are some other brands that are strong in the US, but there's a huge opportunity to really work on globalization of the brand. And the second opportunity that I see is translating the vast R&D investment that the company so proudly makes into actionable claims that deliver on consumer needs. It is pointless to have such a vast investment on R&D unless we can translate that into propositions and brand and products that delight consumers. And I see a lot of great work, but I also can see the potential to really translate that investment into claims that matter to consumers. And finally, I also see an opportunity on the marketing effectiveness, the investment behind these brands in the right channels, in the right media mix, in the right platforms to make sure that once that brand DNA is defined, that then the right investment and sufficient investment is put behind the brands to really build that global aura.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Yes, thank you. I will also build on what Martha said. I'll say 2 areas. One is their financial framework, so really their growth outlook, their growth algorithm. I think it can be a lot more ambitious. When I joined Estee Lauder Companies in 2012, over the 10 years that I was there, it went from $10 billion US dollars, which is where Kao is today, to 18 billion US dollars in 10 years. And some of the growth drivers for that era was China. Consistent and clear pricing was a large growth driver. And because we put in the framework, we were able to take a lot of money back off the table from a value standpoint and reinvest it into advertising. And that was another enabler to the growth. It's because especially if you're in mass, you do need to spend a certain amount of time capturing the consumer's imagination and attention, because it's a very crowded space when you go into the stores. If it's prestige, where you're spending the advertising and promotion dollars, is in what we call consumer push, so that when you're going into the beautiful department stores, which Japan has many and the US also has a lot, you have somebody standing behind the counters explaining the benefits of your beautiful product. So you need some form and some level of advertising. So I think putting in these ambitious goals, putting in some framework to recapture the value, you can then bring back the money and reinvest into the business. And so there's a capital and resource allocation opportunity. And then the second thing I would say is consistency. And so this is me talking as a consumer. Me who, Seth said earlier, somebody in this group lived in Japan a long time ago, and that was me. So I knew Kao as a consumer before I know Kao today as a great corporation. And consistency in showing up on the shelf where you're seeing the value that you communicate through your price points, your messaging, I think today is very inconsistent, and so it can really confuse the consumers. And consumers have a lot of choices today, and when they get confused, they just go on to the next thing. So I think executing consistently in the retail space, and I think an enabler of that is how you incentivize the regional teams and the affiliate teams to make sure that they're working together versus inadvertently working against each other because their targets and goals are more siloed versus integrated. Thank you.
Well, so now I don't want to repeat what was said before, so I will focus, on the digital transformation, because I think there is a massive opportunity as well, as I said earlier, to elevate this digital strategy to become a true growth driver. What we will see at Kao are two things that need to be done: ruthlessly fixing the basics, and I think this will be the initial step to help and enable the growth that the brands will need to deliver, because we need to be able to get and engage with the consumer globally. So that's really a ruthless fixing the basics. And the problem with digital transformation often is that it ends up being a piecemeal approach because there are so many opportunities. And I think this is, again, it's the focus to now make sure to just kind of leverage this as a competitive advantage and leapfrog in the area, because some of the steps that others have been taken and mistakes they've made, we don't need to do again. So the opportunity is really fix the basis, leapfrog, and become that leader even in consumer engagement globally.
So from my perspective, there are three metrics and probably three paths forward that Kao needs to think through. The first is how they're thinking about net revenue overall. To be in line with their peer set, they need to build a plan that gets them to 8 to 10% reliable net revenue growth annually. Today they're hovering around the 1% range optimistically. Second, they need to get to a plan that gets margins close to 50 to 60%, which would put them more in line with their key competitors, and is possible given the categories in which they compete. The third key metric is, of course, EBITDA. And if they are in line with their competition, they would be hovering around the 26 to 28% range, which is a significant difference with where they are today. Those are three lofty metrics. What's the path to get there? The first and foremost is to clarify their portfolio of brands. Kao is blessed with frankly, a beautiful portfolio of brands, some of which, are right next to me. And many of these brands have significant untapped potential around the world. Not all of them are equal. Some of them will need to be significantly de-emphasized. Others will need to be tracked at a board level. I would argue a top 15 brands need to be tracked at a board level, that you get very clear on how they're growing, how margin is improving, how they're capturing share in top markets. The second part of that is all about the markets in which they compete. If you look at Kao today, they have wonderful success in Japan, and if we're honest, quite mixed success in rest of world. And this is actually the opposite of the categories in which they compete. They're leaving money on the table. Most of the categories in which they compete are growing significantly faster outside of Japan. I'll take two categories, skincare and hair care. In many markets around the world, those categories are growing at high single digits and even low double digits. So just keeping up with category growth would have them almost getting to a 10% growth rate. We all know that's not where they are today. The second part of that is the channels in which they compete. And my colleagues referenced this as well. It's a shame to walk into a premier retailer around the world, like a Sephora, like a Douglas in Germany, like a Boots in the UK, and not see Kao's top brands reflected there. Kao has beautiful, beautiful brands. They're just simply not managed in a way that maximizes value. So I see those three financial metrics clearly tied to those three strategic imperatives that will help them to get to a much brighter future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like there are many opportunities for Kao can do, but what do you think? Why do you think Kao is not doing it? Well, all the things you just said are not something only genius can come up with. It's something people should do. Why you think that the Kao is not being able to execute those things? And also, when you answer that, can you also explain why you want to get involved with the Kao?
So I'm happy to start. It's one of my favorite questions. And I think, in my view, the answer is quite simple, at least to the first part. Change is hard. And change is not what Kao is used to doing over time. The second part, and part of why change is hard, is transformation is a skill. Transformation is not something that organizations normally have embedded deeply. And frankly, it's missing at the board level. This whole idea of relentless pursuit of external case studies that create more ambition for the company. Kao needs to build in that transformation mindset to always be relentlessly looking for ways in which they can get better and get ahead of competition, better deliver on consumer insights and needs. And looking at Kao from the outside, it's very evident that energy isn't there. And so I would love to be part of bringing that energy to the board, but I think that's part of the issue.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, from my side, I would agree with what was just said, but it's also about you need a board that understands the challenges and is able to ask the right questions or hold the accountability. And I think that's why it will be so important to add these skills to the board so that the right questions are asked and that the accountability is there. And I think this is also the reason why I'm excited to be part of it, because I'm a believer. I really believe in Kao's brands, into their philosophy, and I believe in the opportunities and the success they can drive. And I would be delighted to really come and help and make this company the global leader they deserve to be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, change is hard. I think that's probably the primary answer. But also, if you have a team who hasn't tried it before, right? I think that's also, it's not because you don't want to, it's just because maybe you haven't done it, you don't know how to do it, or you have a plan, but it is not the plan that you need to. And I think that's why you want to bring in people who have done it, who have seen it, who've done it, maybe failed, and then learn how to do it right. So I think that's important. I mean, we used to talk about in my old companies, which is fail fast. Right? You got to try and then see if it works and then do it again. And failing is very difficult for successful people. So failing is probably very difficult for Kao because it is a successful company, and therefore the fear of failure is possible that's keeping them back from trying something new. And I would say, why do I want to do it? Obviously, I have an affinity to this region. My home was here for many years. I would love to come back and work for a company that is beautiful like Kao is and bring it globally. And so I have a personal and obviously professionally, I have, a range of experience in all the areas that I think Kao could use a little help and some lessons learned that I would love to share with Kao.
Yeah, not a lot to add, but I would say it's probably awareness of the issues. Is there the awareness of these challenges at the board level or opportunities? And also, I think the other point that I will add is the capital allocation, right? Is the capital allocated in the right lines within the organization, right? Because there can be a lot of investment in R&D, and then how is that investment translated into marketing, and how is that amplified across the brands? Where is the capital being allocated in the organization, and is it being spent or allocated in the right lines? Finally, why would I like to do this? I have a huge respect for the Japanese culture, the attention to detail, the respect, the organization, and these are values that I have taken actually and amplified in some of the brands that I have worked on, Aesop, Kiehl's, etc. So it will be a fantastic opportunity to work collaboratively with the board to really make sure that Kao becomes and realizes all its potential to become a world-class leader, and that can surpass the performance of the other players that I have worked on. Thank you.
I would like to slightly reframe the question, if you don't mind. I do not believe it's a matter of incompetence. I believe it's a matter of what I would call the S-curves in the lives of the corporations. There are clearly paths and moments in a corporation's life that you plateau. The corporation's plateaus. The corporation needs that extra incentive, that extra enabling force, lack of better word, that will actually take it to the next level. So to your question, indeed, this is not that we are offering some magic solution beyond the constraints of this planet. We're recognizing a plateau in the history of Kao, and we would like to collectively work for the next S-curve of this particular company. Now, my own personal endeavor, beyond having experienced the passion, the culture, and the business acumen of the Japanese colleagues, be it on manufacturing floor, be it working with companies like Nippon Shokobai and so many others who were suppliers to P&G, I believe that value creation is a journey of life. And if one endorses value creation, which I think you've heard it from all of our colleagues, that in itself becomes my own personal motive to support Kao in its pursuit of the next S-curve.
Thank you. So I was listening to your reactions and imaging the day when you come to the boardroom of Kao. Okay, you are kind of the proposal was rejected by the company. Okay, but the proposal may be supported by the shareholders, and then you may be sent to the boardroom, but they didn't originally like you, or they didn't think that you can contribute, right? Why do you think they thought in that way? I mean, unless you somehow appreciate why they didn't like the proposal, I mean, if you understand that, it's probably better when you communicate with them in the boardroom, maybe you can communicate more effectively. Yes?
I'll start in the middle. I think it's natural to be risk averse. So Kao is going through a moment right now with and I think having a K25 and a K27 plan. Obviously, they're going through a moment to try to figure out how to accelerate their growth, how to meet shareholders' expectations. I have no doubt that the intent is there, but we can get a little risk averse. And so this idea of having new members that they didn't vet and choose, it's natural, right? When you have a new student in your class, you don't know this person, you don't know if you should be friends with them, they might take your lunch, who knows? So I think that's fair. It's not uncommon. What I would say is from our side, we do need to listen to really understand what the root cause would be for them not to want to embrace this. Because honestly, we all have good intent. We have the experience that we would like to contribute. So it seems like a no-brainer, but I think the onus is also on us to learn. You know, where exactly are they worried about? Are they worried that we're going to come in and throw everything out the window and make everybody start anew? That's definitely not our intent. Are they worried that we're going to try something that they've already tried before and it didn't work? Are they worried that our voices will be too loud because we think we know what we're saying? So, I mean, I know that I've worked for a lot of companies as somebody new, and my colleagues have been there for 30 years, and so I've learned over the years to respect the process and to respect the knowledge base that my colleagues have. I was also a consultant for many years, and let me tell you, when the boss hires you to come in to help that person, they don't want you there. So the first thing you need to do is learn to build trust so that we're working together and not against each other. And at the end of the day, if Kao wins, we win. It's not if we win, that's not the point, right? It's we're here for Kao.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I felt the respect of the Kao board giving us the opportunity to interview with them. But it was a virtual interview and it was a 45-minute engagement. I truly believe that if we would have met directly with them and probably in person and for a longer period of time, we would have had the opportunity to share all this passion that we have and all this expertise and how we can add value to shareholders. We have met recently, and we all can testify to each other's expertise, and it has been quite a professional process. But I trust that we would have had the opportunity, and hopefully we will. We would have made a better engagement. And again, this is about is an addition to the board. In very specific expertises, we don't hold any grudges, and we're very open and willing to work together for the benefit of the shareholders.
I couldn't agree more. And just to build on that a bit and link it to something that my colleague Giannis referenced, which is the life of a company. and the S-curves of companies when they perform in different ways. And a lot of times when you see a company plateau, what tends to be associated with that is a lot of internal thinking, a lot of what is happening inside the company, getting fixated on inside the company, recreating the inside of the company over and over again, where I think we all know the companies that are thriving in the marketplace today are focused outside the company, where the consumer is, where things are different than they might have been in the past. And that is scary, to a lot of leaders because it represents change. And I do believe that the five of us represent a dynamic of I think, selective change, for the organization, intentional change. And I'm sure that was part of the mindset, whether it was intentional or not.
Yeah, and just very short to it. Fully agree and really want to emphasize also what Launchi said, because the onus is on us. So the importance is we're not coming in as a disruptor. We're an addition with skills that will be helpful for the company. So for us, it is important that the board is still functioning, and we will remain having a functioning board. So I think this is really important for all of you to know. Our effort will be to create this new team, this extended team, because I assume that today there is a team of a board that works in a certain way. And we need to learn, we need to understand, we need to also get behind what are the challenges they're dealing with. Yes, we all have great ideas and we have fantastic expertise, but we have also respect, and I just wanted to emphasize that.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for my ignorance, but I believe Kao is having a board meeting every month. I guess so. How are you coming to Japan every time when the board happens? Or how are you going to participate in the board discussions going forward if you are appointed?
It's a great question. Distances don't help. Absolutely clear. I plan to travel. I have been traveling the entire 40 years of my life. Travel, as much as is nuisance to many of us and tiresome, is a reality of today's world. I do not sincerely believe that will be an obstacle. By the way, one of considerations when one joins the board is worth reviewing some of these processes. Does really a board of a global company merits getting together every month? As this could be, if voted my sixth board since 2016, I have not experienced boards getting together every month. I have experienced boards like I travel in Switzerland or I travel to Canada, getting together 4 times a year, and if there is an urgency or an agenda that requires attendance, in the world of today, one has an array of tools that one can actually conduct the meetings with. So I frankly don't see that as an obstacle. Instead, I see it as a way of learning and learning more about the company.
Yeah, in my case, I'm Peruvian. I was educated in Boston and I live in London, so we are all global citizens. And I only have taken roles in my career where I have managed brands globally. Because as a marketeer in consumer products, I'm passionate about being in touch with consumers in Europe, in America, in Asia, in Latin America, Australasia, etc. So I don't like my colleague Yanis. I don't see that as for me, traveling and being in stores in the market is a positive. In my last brand, Aesop, Japan was my #1 market. So I was here quite frequently and very similar to other brands that I have managed in the past. So yeah, that's the nature of the job.
Yeah, I would say it's a benefit that I don't live in Japan 100% because I get to see all the Kao products show up in other markets, as a local consumer. I traveled a lot in my life, and at my job when I was at KFC, I actually traveled 3 weeks out of the month. because I had a global role, and so I'm very comfortable traveling. My children are older, and I think they would be very happy if I traveled. And so you would do them a favor to have me travel. But yes, I think initially, for sure, we need to be here in person. It's very challenging to build rapport and trust over Zoom. So I think that's the key. And then once we get to know each other and we learn, how to work together, we learn how to communicate effectively together, then let's see what happens. But I'm committed. If that takes a year, or 2 years, that's what we need to do. We will do what is necessary.
Yeah, just emphasizing it. And I also want to say, I find it crucial, specifically in the beginning, to be there in person, despite technology would be able to help us. Because if we really want to build a team and get to know each other in person, will be very important. So from my side, IMD is not only in Lausanne, but also in Singapore, as you might know. So I am in Asia quite frequently anyways, and I would be very keen to be here in person because that's how we best understand.
Very similar. I would plan to travel. In being a global executive for a large number of years now, I'm used to being on the road some 20 weeks a year, a minimum. And even in one of my former projects for the better part of 2.5 to 3 years, I was in Japan for 1 week of every 4. So I have already built a mindset of travel, and whatever it takes to drive success would be my plan.
Okay, great. So once you are on the board, what is your expectation or target for you to make change in Kao?
So I'm happy to start. In my experience, the best way to start is to do a significant amount of listening and understanding the business, understanding the brands, understanding, of course, the people, inclusive of both our fellow board members as well as the operating group, building that depth of understanding and experience to get to a position of trust. And once you have that position of trust, that's when you can have impact. That's not to say that we won't be contributing as quickly as possible, but at least in my experience working across 6 different global companies where there was often moments of conflict or change where you had to learn a new environment, what always works is spending the time to get to know the people and the businesses, and then you move on to a position of trust and drive impact. So that would be my...
So when can I expect to see change? In 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? If you're on the board.
I think that it would depend on what the change was. I think you can probably see some change within a year, some change, and I think that will continue to build over time and start to see business results in the 2nd and 3rd year. To me, that would be an acceptable level of movement, considering the board's role is not to operate, right? The board's role is to guide. So we're much more about the future of the business.
Yeah, and from my side, I think, time will tell, because change is something that the new board then jointly has to decide. So I'm not taking the complete American view. So as a European, maybe I'm in the middle. It might take 2 to 3 years to see really big changes. It really depends, how fast will we be able to build this team to jointly set maybe new priorities and have all the conversations that we certainly will need to have.
I'm going to be honest. So I'm going to rephrase the question. Is it when can we see the change, or how fast is the pace of change that we should expect, right? Because we're bringing in 5 new board members that, have the roadmap to pursue some of the goals that Kao has put in place. That's the international expansion, right? That's brand building. That's with international expansion, you need a supply chain expert to make that happen. With brand building and revenue growth, you need to get into a new channel of distribution. You need digital, you need transformation. So what is that pace of change that's expected? As a finance person, I would sit down and look at the K27 plan. What's the financial building blocks for the 6 months, for the 12 months, right, for the remainder of the 2 years, and what can some of those things, where can we accelerate those changes? That's what I would do, and then sort of pace it out that way. I think there are some very probably quick wins. I hesitate to say that now because I don't know all the facts and I don't want to lose credibility by making up data, but there's got to be some quick win. If a company's been growing at this pace since 1890 versus, an Estee Lauder company that was founded in 1940 something, and they reached almost 18 billion versus 10 billion, we probably can accelerate something, is what my hypothesis would be.
Okay, fine. Then next question would be, what is your most important value? What is most important to you?
I'll go first.
Yep. First, a short would be great. But
Yes.
anyway, yeah.
It's just one word: trust.
Trust.
Trust for me is an imperative. It's about one goes through life, the way one engages, and the way one holds true to his or her own values in life. So I'll leave you with trust.
For me, is giving back. Giving back to, so I think giving back to others, giving back to, the planet, sustainability, giving back our knowledge and experience to shareholders is this notion of enriching the life of others.
I'm going to cheat and say two things. Integrity. So that's the definition of that is doing something right when no one is looking. I think that's important. And loyalty.
And I have to repeat, so I would say trust and integrity, because these are the two fundamentals for me, values that I want to have.
And I will cheat and use one of the words that was used already in addition to a second one. To me, it's integrity and progress. Progress, always moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. By the way, I'd like to take some questions from audience later. So if you have any questions, please think about that. If you become the CEO of Kao for 1 month, what you gonna do? Anyone?
That will be a wonderful opportunity, by the way, that I don't think I will be granted in life. But let's assume I am granted in life, thanks to you, Oki-san, for 1 month. To me, the most fundamental thing, I will spend the first week in talking to the men and women on every floor at Kao. Then I will go and engage with the executives of my team, with my board, and work on the definition of a strategic plan and an array of KPIs that will actually win the day big. Now, I left last the consumer and the customer in a way. But to me, having the ability to connect to the consumer and the customers that you are serving are imperative. And therefore, that will be my first month. Can't think of anything else, but that will be my first month. Thank you.
Like Janice, I will make an effort to talk to everyone in the organization. But my priority will be to assess the health of the brands, to assess the health across territories, across categories, to really identify which brands are delighting consumers and which ones we want to expand and which ones we want to perhaps repurpose.
Okay, by the way, question is not for the first month of CEO. Only 1 month. In 30 days, you will be fired. So you have power only for 1 month.
Yeah, I
What
think
you
my
wanna do?
legacy, if I can give that legacy to the organization, to have a roadmap of what to do with the brands, which ones to invest in and globalize, and which ones probably divest or perhaps play as a local or regional player, I think that will be a fantastic legacy. And also instill this pride into the employees for the brands. Love brands, not only love with consumers, but as an associate, walking into that office every day, feeling so proud of working with a brand that is improving consumers' lives.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. So same thing. I would talk to the employees. It's not my first month, but let's say it's my 15th month. I would still talk to the employees because I think if we're talking about legacy, I would want to find those key employees that are excited for change, or the key influencers, and I would put them in spots of leadership. And my legacy will be to seed a transformation mindset. In addition to just prioritizing where we can tackle and give those people wings.
So I think for me, despite, of course, speaking to the employees, but when we're talking about 1 month, I think I would want to really, really talk to the consumer of Kao and really get under the skin, and would encourage all employees to really talk to all the consumers, not only in Japan, everywhere. Because my legacy, I want this company to be a consumer-centric company, so that from there, they develop the products consumers really want and need.
A month is tough. That's a short period of time. I would say the first thing that came to mind for me to have lasting impact is to set an ambitious and exciting North Star for the company, something that will have lasting impact beyond my 30 days, that will excite and emote the type of change mindset that would have lasting impact in how Kao would deliver for its employees, for its consumers, for its customers, for a long period of time, for the next 100+ years for the company.
Okay. I have been running my company, a publicly traded company, for like a quarter century. Wow. Okay. And time to time, I have argument with the board outside directors. Of course, right? Well, so I'm not here to answer questions. You are here to answer questions. So you on the board, and you are informed, and you have a very good discussion with the management. But at the end, you and the management CEO has got a different opinion. Okay, not after the shallow discussion, but a really deep discussion. What you want to do?
I would trust the CEO and the management to go ahead doing their way. Because at the end of the day, it boils down that the operational acumen, knowledge, expertise, and decision-making resides with them. We, as board members, in my experience, we are there to safeguard the interests of the shareholders, and there I use the word stakeholders. At the end of the day, the running, Oki-san, is entirely up to you and your management.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the value that we discussed earlier, which is trust, right? I think you ask the questions, you have the deep discussions, you look at the data, but at the end of the day, the executive team is there to execute. And as a board member, you're there to guide and to make sure that the decision is well thought out before being executed.
Agreed. The only thing I would not let go of if it was harmful to somebody, if there was, but otherwise, if there's no, humankind harm, the CEO is accountable for the company, and we're there to give you all of the, 360 questions, and it's up to the CEO.
Very good point. Yes.
I would simply say fully agree, because I think operation, but also, of course, safeguarding, if anything, needs to be protected.
So I guess the first thing that came to mind for me is that any board or any team that agrees all the time, there's something wrong. Frankly, it's healthy to have the dynamic of disagreement within a board. And any board that I've been on, that is something I'm always a proponent of. We're agreeing too much. Why? Are we not scoping the data widely enough that we actually see things that are different? And then the second philosophical point, because this is, I guess, philosophical, is you debate extensively in the room, and then you leave aligned so that you have a united front for the organization, that you're all speaking to that decision as if it is your own, even if you were passionately disagreeing in the room, and you should. To me, that would be my reaction.
Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to take some questions from the floor. Anyone has any question? 何かこちらの皆さんにどなたか
Anyone? Would you like to ask a question? You can ask your question to a specific candidate or can be to all people.
The pitch, the conversation. I just had a quick question. I think some of you mentioned about the change, the improvements, how you're gonna make a better Kao. But I believe in most cases also there's a certain level of sacrifice behind the scene when you bring the changes or the improvements. So at this moment, I would like to hear your thoughts on what kind of the sacrifices or the thing to be leave there, or what kind of thing you think the Kao needs to be. I mean, to let it go.
Anyone want to take?
Because at the end of the day, it's a kind of a trade-off.
Would you mind if I frame the question so that we are certain that we understood you?
Yeah.
You are looking to identify what would be the sacrifices at Kao if one is to make a change.
Yes, like it can be a culture thing. It can be
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I don't think there is natural progress and growth, and to that extent, there are consequences. You will agree with me.
Yeah, right.
So I would say we are here, as described by Seth, and I think you can find it in the internet, about what we consider as a growth opportunity. In that pursuit, you could imagine some sacrifices being a portfolio revamping. So while today Kao goes to market with 60 significant brands, you could think of divesting a portion of that. In that pursuit, you could think that there may be a plant, an organization, a procurement organization that may be a consequence of that. But I would say, to me, one has to focus on the bigger and better opportunities. But let me only reemphasize something. The engagement is not about destroying culture. The engagement is about building on the culture. By adding the experience that we bring, the clarity of purpose, the clarity of KPIs. That will be my thoughts as I think through that. Thank you.
And just building on that point, which I very much agree with, the key when change is happening in bringing an organization along is communication and making sure that folks and the organization, the employees, management, understands the why behind the change. And if I could just rephrase the word sacrifice to investment. In my view, it's a change in where you invest. And if the organization understands the North Star, it makes those changes easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it helps them to see that they're contributing towards something that's bigger. And at least for me, that would be how I'd handle it.
Sacrifice というような
Maybe we need to have a good discussion so that we don't see this as sacrifice. If we cannot have enough discussion, people may feel that it's a sacrifice.
Then there will be no sacrifice. Yeah. 他に質問
Okay, and the person over there. Second row from the front.
Thank you. Once you get on the board, then of course the board seat comes with committee works. So let's dig into that a little bit. Which, among the five of you, which committee or committees would you be more interested in joining, and why? What might be your purpose, your mission in getting into those committees? And in fact, based on what you already know about the company now, would you even suggest the new board to create new committees, merge or combine or change the function, and maybe even set up advisory committees or advisory boards in order to achieve your objectives? So let's hear what you may have to.
Sure. I will start, if I may. There are two committees I would really like to join. One is, of course, risk. When you think about digital, cybersecurity is always an easy box to tick. But it's a lot more than that when we're thinking about AI. And it's a lot more when we're thinking about going global. So that would be one I would definitely want to be part of. And the other one for me is human capital, or I'm not sure how they what the name of it is, but that one I would love to join because it will be very important to get the right talent with the right skill set if we really want to kind of expand global. So these were the two I would kind of initially say, yes, that would be a really important thing to be part of these discussions. What I would advise is actually to have a digital advisory kind of board or a digital committee. I think this is discussions to be had, how to do it, because if you're elevating this to a strategic level, it definitely needs to have a committee or at least an advisory board to watch and ensure that what has been done and how the strategy is executed is, on one hand, still very aligned with the business strategy, but also gives the company foresight in what's next, because the development goes faster and faster. So that would be my initial thinking, without having ever talked about the committees, of course, and what is needed. This is just from my skill set.
So a couple things. In my prior board experience, I would have comfort joining any of the committees, and I've formally been part of almost all of them and informally part of all of them. In terms of creating a new part of board committee, I do believe Kao needs a strategic growth committee that will elevate the future of growth for Kao to the board level and have it be metrics and very clear in its plan and how it moves forward. When I've seen that part of boards in my past, it has had a major impact in changing positively the culture towards focusing on growth. So for me, that would be important.
Okay, maybe one more answer from us, and then we can do more questions. What I would say is I would look at the committees and see how effective they are first. Maybe, and then we can make a decision whether we should reform the committees. Naturally, the finance person always joins the audit committee, so I would love to do that. But I think the other parts of your question would be maybe revisit the committees, because now we have more people, we have different skill sets, and so together with the current board, we can figure out what the right number of committees would be, and whether one in, one out. And that way we can be, I think the key is prioritization. We can be focused and prioritize.
Okay, thank you for the moderation. Next, 次の質問は、じゃあ、
The one sitting in the back, please.
I have two questions. It's a bit sneaky, so you can just choose which one you want to answer. My first question, Lanchi-san and Anya, you touched on it a little bit about culture transformation. Obviously, the board is here to guide the company, support the executives, but the people executing a transformation plan, a portfolio restructuring, are the managers and the frontline staff. And that's a big task, and it's quite an organizational transformation. So I'm wondering, particularly Japanese companies or any companies that you have supported in the past, what is your expertise and how would you guide the executives of Kao to achieve a sustainable organizational transformation? That's the first one. The second one is Kao, I believe, has a B2B chemicals business that's about 20% of revenue and quite globalized and I think quite profitable. What stance would you take with regards to the B2B chemical business? And do you think there's any learnings that might cross over between the B2B and the B2C side of the company?
Okay, who wants to take a first question?
I'll take the first question. I came to be the P&G supply chain officer in 2011. And culturally, we were really in a plateau. We've been working for years on high-performance work systems, but we were missing the real connection to the total shareholder returns as an organization of 65,000 men and women. Therefore, I took the initiative to go to Toyota and learn from them the run-to-target methodology. In exchange, Toyota came to our plants and learned about high-performance work systems. This process has been phenomenal. It lasted for 2 years. It involved 2 very significant organizations, and it was all about learning. I can proudly say that the $14 billion structural savings that the organization then delivered for 10 years, it was because of that particular intervention that we codenamed Zero Loss, 100% employee involvement. And we could actually take it down to the floor, to the man and the woman, and get that person connected to the output of the company. So I love these cultural interventions, to be very frank, because I think they can rally everybody. And the notion of 100% employee involvement is not about the CEO, is not about the board, is not about the executive. This is the men and women on the floor. Love the question. Thank you.
Okay. Second question.
I think regarding the second question, to me, will be, how the chemical division is helping the organization maintain a competitive edge or a competitive advantage, right? We were discussing this yesterday in terms of if there is a role, it's profitable, it's growing, let's see, let's revise the numbers and the data. But to me, it's about if strategically the chemicals division is helping the organization to stay at the forefront of innovation, to gain access to raw materials or new technologies in terms of surfactants or many of the other topics that we have been discussing in the last few days. I think that after we do the analysis, again, collaboratively with the board, then, a decision has to be made. But I think it has a role as long as it helps the organization maintain a competitive edge versus other players. Thank you. And fulfill its mission and its purpose, right?
Okay, thank you. So the time is up. I hope this session was somehow helpful for you to assess how they could contribute to Kao and Kao's shareholders. I'm just an interviewer, but I really appreciate your honest answers. And my personal view is outside viewpoint is very, very important. We can get into some kind of hole whereby just believing ourselves. So getting outside viewpoint is, I think it's generally very good. Anyway, thank you for the session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Wow. Right? Aren't those directors amazing? Right? Don't we wish we could have directors of this quality on all Japanese boards? I've met thousands of directors of Japanese companies, This is in the top 1% of all the directors that I've met. And so, I mean, this is what we're trying to do here. This is why we're all here. This is why I think they can. The quality of the directors is what I think is effective and can help Kao dramatically improve. So we've been asked lots of questions. We'll give you a minute, and please continue asking questions via the app. But we've been asked lots of questions. One of the questions have been, why have we nominated 5 directors and not 1 and 2? You've seen all their distinct and bespoke skill sets. You've seen how they all have exact and specific knowledge about what their specific fields are. But I think if we want to have a much better Kao, we need all of them. It's really important for us to have all of them. You don't want to have marketing without supply chain. You don't want to have better brand transformation without an improved pricing policy and finance. You don't want to have digital marketing without the appropriate supply chain. We need all of them. And I think all of these things, supply chain optimization, global marketing, financial strategy, brand management, digital transformation, all extraordinarily important. Remember, this is going to be a 14-person board. This is only 5 out of 14. This is still a minority slate. They're there simply to help the board. ISS says, Oasis has presented a strong and balanced slate of candidates who bring collectively relevant industry and operational experience. Unfortunately, Kao has had an allergy to hiring external parties, external officers, external executives. They had a resignation just now of the most foreign officers ever, just now in December 24, leaving only 2 foreign executives to oversee global growth in cosmetics and health and beauty. There have been an unwillingness to consider new senior talent to help with global expansion. That's another reason we're here. Unfortunately, they should have just been accepted as company nominees. Kao rehired Joe Workman, as mentioned, a former Kao American executive who left in 2019. And similarly, Lisa McCallum has a relationship with Kao that dates all the way back to the 90s. And they generally have a lack of fresh blood and mid-career hires to drive innovation at home. I mentioned earlier, all of a sudden, old directors manage to have new skills. That's simply, I think, some part of their defense, but it's clearly now an exposed part of their defense. But let's be honest and transparent with our shareholders. As a matter of fact, we invited them here to join us as well. I would like them to meet you. Unfortunately, we invited all of them to join us. They did not respond. And so, as mentioned, they're missing expertise in leadership. They don't, the Kao CEO is an R&D experience. Kao CEOs have always had R&D experience. Everybody else is P&Gs, Unilevers, L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, Shiseido, Beiersdorf, all have marketing executives or supply chain executives as senior leadership. So Kao came out with, I think, an offensive response because they didn't take the time to study, they didn't take the time to truly interview, and as a matter of fact, they didn't even interview one of you in person, and I'm sorry. But as mentioned, they didn't even give you a chance to clarify and expand and understand your true roles. 1 hour without consecutive translation is not enough. Nowhere near enough, with only 2 people. So they went ahead and claimed about Yanis, he has no experience as CEO or senior executive of a global company. I'm sorry, they're wrong about that. As you heard from him, he was a senior executive of P&G, responsible for over 57,000 employees, 110 manufacturing plants, and 220 distribution centers. He is far more qualified almost than anybody else on the board. They claim he has a lack of in-depth understanding and advisory experience with Japanese companies. You heard, he's been on the board of a Japanese company. He ran 6 boards. He ran production plants here in Japan. So I don't know what they're talking about. They talk about that Giannis is not truly independent. Yes, I didn't know Giannis before a couple of months ago. Right? He's been an advisor to us on helping on coming here. We paid for his flight here to come here and meet all of you. But that's it. That'll end on March 21st, when we hope he's a member of the board. He's going to treat us like any other board member. We talk about independence, though. You can't have one policy for Giannis and say he's not independent because he's been a consultant for an advisor and for a couple of months, and then have a different standard for your own nominees. You can't say Sarah Casanova is independent when she served currently and plans on continuing serving currently on Mitsui & Co.'s board, which is their JV partner. You want to say Giannis is not independent? How can you say Takashima is independent when he was the chairman of SMBC, Kao's main bank? And likewise, Sakurai-san shared board connection with Takashima at SMFG. So I'm happy to say they're all independent. And I think that's the right answer. You want to say local to global? Giannis has world-class experience. They say that they already have sufficient supply chain at a sufficient level and there's no need for enhancement. You heard him already just now talk about it's not there. They have a limited North American production footprint that severely restricts their US scalability and their profitability. So he has 35 years of global supply chain leadership in P&G, he's managed 57,000 people, and has a proven track record in implementing transformative strategies. Kao is wrong about Lanchi. Dramatically, they said she served as CFO, she only served for a short time as a private company, and she lacks management experience. They disregard her responsibility as head of strategy alongside a CFO position, which says nothing about her, does not say nothing about her esteemed career history in management positions at global brands. If Kao wants to expand globally, as per they say in K27, the board needs global expertise. They said she lacks in-depth understanding and advisory experience of Japanese companies. She had global expertise and global responsibilities. They said the board of directors has not designated financial expertise as an area to additionally strengthened. We've already been through that they need this comprehensively. They said at the document screening stage, it was confirmed that her expertise and career do not align with the needs of the company. So they want to talk about engagement. They did not even bother to interview her for 1 hour. I think it's quite shameful. Then they continue to miss. She helped scale Estee Lauder's business from 10 billion to 18 billion. She helped implement sophisticated multi-tier pricing schemes. She established marketing return ROI metrics, and she used consumer data for key financial decisions. Something about key, she actually knows her customers are men or women. She knows their demographics. She knows she knows their ages. She knows who they are. She knows their earning power. She knows how they shop, where they shop, and why they shop. So they ask, is there skills overlap between Kao's board members, Makoto Takashima and Takai Nishi and Lanchi Vinatar? No. There are no skills overlap. She has sophisticated experience in FMCG companies, which they do not have. ISS says, according to the company's own board skills matrix, the current outside directors have limited industry experience and no marketing and branding and IT digital expertise. And so Kao are wrong about Anya. They say she has no experience as a CEO or senior executive level of a global company or director of a listed company. That's false. I don't know. Tell me, Anya. JTI, is that a global company? And was that That's a senior executive level. What are you talking about? She had the position of Chief Digital Officer and Global VP of Strategy for JTI. They say the board has not designated DX as a skill area to be additionally strengthened this time. But the board also say there was room to diversify skills in areas such as global branding and IT. So they can't say, we reject her because we don't need the skill, but there's room for growth there. You can't have both. Like, which one is it? And then she says, they say, when a candidate lacks experience as a director, it may be difficult for them to be effective, to make effective decisions on complex management issues, or to contribute smoothly to the decision-making process alongside other directors. It's extraordinarily unclear to me how they could look at Ms. Longonzi's career history and claim that she lacks experience or would be unable to make effective decisions on complex management issues. She has a proven track record of doing that. So why is it important? It's important because my Kao has only 1.6 million monthly visitors versus Cosme, which has 23.6. It's important because the number of top search results for Curel is only 31 times, and Extentifils is 155 times in Southeast Asia. She has a history of looking into this and executing and help fixing these specific issues. Kao is wrong about Martha. They say she has no experience as CEO or senior executive level of a global company. I'm sorry. Has anybody seen Aesop here in Japan? Like, she held key roles at C-suite level experience in global cosmetics companies. They say she has lack of in-depth understanding and advisory experience of Japanese companies. I'm sorry. Has anybody seen Aesop here in Japan? They say her tenure at CMO is short. They miss all her roles at Aesop and P&G and L'Oreal and Coty. They say that additional marketing expertise will not be necessary as this will be strengthened by our proposed candidates. I'm sorry. You see Aesop all over Japan. The problem is you don't see Molton Brown all over Japan. The problem is you don't see Molton Brown all over America. You see Aesop all over America. The problem is you don't even see Molton Brown all over the UK. You see Aesop all over the UK. She's responsible for that. She could help guide Kao to help grow Molton Brown in particular. Kao is dramatically wrong about you. They say has no experience as CEO or senior executive level of a global company. I'm sorry. His experience as a vice president, president, CMO, and many of Kao's competitors. They say he lacks an in-depth understanding and advisory experience with Japanese companies. I'm sorry. He explained just before his extensive experience with companies, with global responsibilities, with companies with in-depth exposure here and in-depth businesses here. And so they say their market expertise would not be necessary or strengthened by our proposed candidates. I'm sorry. He's a CMO. They don't even have a CMO, nor do they have somebody on the board. Most other companies, as we showed you before, have CMOs as the executives, as the CEO. So they say, is there a skills overlap between Kao's nominees, Lisa McCallum and Sarah Casanova, and Oasis nominees, Martha Lavanda and Hugh Dineen? No. We went over this before. There is no overlap. Sarah Casanova managed McDonald's Japan as his licensee, selling burgers to Japanese customers. That's it. She doesn't have the experience selling FMCG, beauty and healthcare and cosmetics products internationally. Lisa McCallum was an ESG specialist, already consulting for Kao with very little visible international brand operating experience. And so she's been already with them for a long period of time. Where are the results for that? Hugh, Thomas Johnson & Johnson and MetLife, transformed multiple brands and developed new brands, both B2C and B2B strategies. And Martha went ahead and led 100+ global marketing professionals at Aesop, managing billion-dollar budgets at previous employers. So do any of the nominees have experience in Japan? First of all, is it necessary to have Japan experience to join the Kao board? I'd say to start with, Kao, I think, has enough Japan experience. We're sitting here talking about, does Kao have enough international experience? So they're trying to reject these nominees because they don't have enough Japanese experience. I'm sorry, do you not have enough Japan experience? But let's answer their question directly. Martha was CMO at ASAP, as mentioned, all over Japan. You led large Japan teams here at MetLife. Anya directed digital strategy for Japan Tobacco. Lanchi went ahead and at Estee Lauder, global pricing fell under a remit, including Japan. Giannis was a board member at Blue Yonder, and post-acquisition company of Panasonic, and managed P&G's global Japanese manufacturing supply network. They have key and important Japan experience, even though that's not even a question. Let's set up better incentives. Let's set up a measurable incentive plan. That's what we'd like to do here. That's what all the competitors do, and that's the competitive strategy of winning. The lesson from the peers is to go ahead and set measurable targets so they know where they're trying to go. And so I'd like to answer your questions so that we can make sure your questions are both answered, and we can hope to get your votes for all these directors and all our other proposals for the company and help create together a better Kao. So let's start here with our updated what questions we have. So I think the first question we have here, I can't see, I'm going to read it out, and please ask additional questions while we're here. But the first question here is, I can't see what Kao's core strengths are versus the competition. Cosmetics, detergents, none of these appear to be strengths. What exactly does Oasis think he can do? You know what? Cosmetics can very much be a core strength. We've spent our time describing why that can be a core strength. Detergents is also a core strength because you can take the cash flow from detergents and invest in marketing and go ahead and build the cosmetics and health and brand businesses. So next question is, Kao has a very strong trade marketing business model in Japan. Are there any strengths from this that can be leveraged to go global? Or is it holding them back? No. That's the fun part. It's not holding them back. We could take the cash flow from that great Japan business and use it internationally. We could use the great brand that Japan has, that these are brands that are beloved in Japan. These are brands that are used daily in Japan. These are brands that are in every konbini all across Japan that people use and buy every single day, and sell that internationally. People love Japan products. People love the quality of Japan products. So both the prestige of being a Japan product and the cash flow generated by the business of Japan can both be used internationally. Third question is, I believe that the current management team is responsible for the current poor performance. So why are you not opposed to the director proposals proposed by the company at the time? Because I choose to, I think, work with management. We want to go ahead and just add oversight. We want to add accountability. And I think that's the next important incremental step here. Now, this means that I hope that they can help management, but I'm disappointed I haven't had a better opportunity to engage with management, but that's where we are. Fourth question I have here is, have you considered appointing a Japanese candidate? I believe that the 5 people recommended by your fund, by Oasis, have excellent careers, but Kao is reluctant to even hire outside talent. So I think that the shareholder proposal for an outside director cannot communicate in Japanese would be a high hurdle. You know what? We think we're talking here about global expansion. We're not talking about the Japanese customer and consumer. We're not talking about dealing with Japanese corporates. We're talking about communicating with Italian customers and French customers and English customers and Spanish customers and American customers and South American customers and Southeast Asian customers and Chinese customers. No, I couldn't find, I'm sorry, I couldn't find one candidate that speaks 46 languages. nor do I think that's really important. We found candidates who can go ahead and execute in all the growth markets for Kao. We found candidates that can go ahead and understand the customers in all of Kao, in all their growth markets. We found candidates themselves who are diverse, as you've heard, of all diverse backgrounds, from Greece to Vietnam, right? And everywhere in between. Right? So including South America, and including continental Europe, and including America. And so candidates themselves are a very diverse group. And so I don't know, I don't think that that's important. There's a fun question here, I guess. Seth, can you please share your favorite book? Anyway, whoever asked that question, I'm happy to, please find me later. We're happy to talk about books all day long. I'm a voracious reader. I'm kind of extraordinarily passionate about continuing to learn and continuing to grow and continuing to read. And so, there's a high hurdle for like your favorite book. Is that fiction and is that Moby Dick? Is that Daniel Kahneman and Thinking Fast and Slow? Is that every time you read the Bible, you see something else and you kind of appreciate something else and realize that the struggles that we go through in life have been tested time and time again, that family relations are important, that national relations are important, that kind of how do we organize ourselves better as a community and as a people. Those are things you kind of find every single time or kind of and see with a different lens. So anyway, whoever asked that question, I'm happy to I'm happy to talk about books all day long and happy to recommend a couple that I've read recently. Right? Another question here is, you had very short meetings with Kao. If you could repeat this, anything would you have done differently? You know what? I've reviewed our notes from Kao numerous times, from that meeting specifically. Make sure I got it right, that he really said it was 50% men. Make sure that there was no other substance out of the meeting. There wasn't any. Unfortunately, I don't think he came for a genuine meeting. I think he came to talk about some atmospherics, but like we tried to have a detailed conversation about Molten Brown, wasn't prepared to have that. We tried to have a detailed conversation. I said, look, I've been waiting 2 months for this meeting. Could we do it for 2 hours? Could we do it for 3 hours? Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and roll up our sleeves, right? And let's talk about how together we can go ahead and build a better Kao, right? I sat there with him. I said, I wanted to sit there with him, right? And say, let's go together and build a better Kao, right? Unfortunately, in our meeting, right, it was cut dramatically short, and we didn't get that opportunity, right? But I'm sitting here prepared to roll up our sleeves, and we want to roll up our sleeves and get involved in details. There's another question here. What are the key reactions by Kao that made Oasis move on an engagement with the scale? What could Kao have done better? It's a great question. Kao could have engaged and also rolled up their sleeves. Kao could have also sat with us and let's talk about each business line and how we're going to improve each business line. Kao said, great, what are the issues? This is how we're going to challenge them. This is how we're going to tackle them. Great, here are the issues, here we're going to tackle them. Here, maybe you're wrong about this thing, this is why. Right? And I'm prepared to be wrong, but let's talk about each one. And what's the time frame for dealing with this? Who's going to internally deal with it? And then let's hold them accountable for it. That's the way most of our engagements work. That's what I hoped was going to happen here. So, right? When do you anticipate to exit, or how do you anticipate to exit? Win this for the long run. Win this for the long run. We want to participate with Kao's success and growth. There's been a long history, and actually a long, even recent history for that matter, but now years long, both of us participating 10 plus years of us participating in company success, but of a history of companies that have made a transformation in the last 3, 4, and 5 years, that have more than doubled revenues, that have more than doubled margins, stock prices have gone up dramatically, profitability has gone up dramatically, companies have shared some of that with their employees, and so there's been a long track record of success, and we remain shareholders of that company, remain an extraordinarily friendly, engaged with management to further help them, and largely with cheering from the sidelines to help watch that continued growth. Right. There is, what Kao does business with a very large number of small and medium-sized companies. Is there any possibility of taking measures that would significantly impact these companies? Not at all. We're talking here about international growth. We're not trying to affect at all local growth. As a matter of fact, those businesses will benefit as well from a stronger Kao. Everybody's going to benefit. Next question is, in your view, the board compensation amount and mix should go closer to US and European and US peers right away. As you heard, Abe Pay Governance designed this. The leading Japanese companies have implemented this. We want Kao to be a leading Japanese company? Great. Let's implement similar measures. Proposing directors with such skills show that the current directors do not have enough skills. This is somebody's question. Considering the negative effects of having too many directors, wouldn't it be better to propose the employment of these 5 directors instead of the director candidates proposed by the company, so the company would not have to pay unnecessary compensation? You know what? I'm happy for all these directors to be directors of the company. I'm happy for diversity of views. And you know what? The amount of money paid for the directors is extraordinarily small cost for all of us to pay relative to the performance we can get, the additional profitability the directors can have on the board and in the company. So I am certainly, as one shareholder, I'm prepared to have them all as directors. That's for you to choose. If you want to choose just these 5 and not theirs, that's your choice. All of this is your choice, clearly, right? Why do you believe Kao was competitively compared to global competitors? And what indicators do you consider to recognize the strength despite poor performance? As noted, we think the company is extraordinarily cheap in potential. We think that we've done this through lots of different studies, lots of different hiring, and lots of different third-party agents, spent well over $1 million going ahead and investigating the brand potentials. And that's from everything from direct surveys with customers, that's through digital, in-person surveys, that's digital surveys, that's samples of online comments, that's from various different degrees of social media postings of just enthusiasts of beauty products who compare the different beauty products and are passionate about it without compensation. So our data comes, and from industry leaders or industry executives who can compete with the products. So it comes from a whole host of them. Right? You said that outside directors are in a position to protect governance, and they would ultimately leave it to management team who are in the position to execute. But I think that one idea would be to send a full-time director to take on the role of execution in order to immediately improve management. I would like to hear your thoughts on this point of view. I think simply these directors do bring enormous amount of skill and knowledge, but they are all experienced as board director roles. They understand what directors' roles are, and directors' roles are to hold management accountable. If they need new executives, great. Let's go ahead. They can go ahead and help conduct. They can help go ahead. Maybe they'll be in a nomination committee. Maybe they could help HR within the company. Maybe that will help the company find additional talent to help them, but they know their roles as directors. Right? Okay. There actually are a lot more questions. I think it's time for us to wrap up. We have somebody here to help all of us actually understand how to vote, because I've described to you here why you should vote, and I think how you should vote, but physical act of how to vote,
Hello, I'm Nagai, a lawyer from Clifford Chance. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join here. And then I think you are feeling more and more to vote for the shareholder proposal. I would like to spend the next 10 minutes to explain as to how to vote at the AGM. Excuse me. So I'm going to explain some details. There are 3 key points. The first one is the deadline. By March 19th, the vote needs to be made. If it's mailed, it should arrive by that day. And then if you are present on that venue, you can do so. But if you do this prior to the AGM, do it so by 19th. And make sure you express your, whether it's for or against. If it's blank, then that automatically is considered that your vote is for Kao, but not for against the OSS. So please clearly express your opinion. And then in case of internet voting, so make sure that you vote for specific proposal, not the entire, but the specific individual proposals. I will explain as to how you should do so after this. So this is the overview of the AGM. You already have the convocation notice, and you know this, but the date is Friday, 21st of March. The venue is a banquet hall at Hotel New Otani. So if you are to be there, please be there. And there are matters to be reported, matters to be resolved. So the matters to be reported are general things, like a business report or audit report. And the matters to be reported, this is we have company proposals and then shareholder proposals. Agenda item from 1 to 3 are from the company, and then agenda items from 4 to 7 are from the shareholders. So when we say shareholder here, that means Oasis this time. So if you are for the shareholder proposal, you will vote for these shareholder proposals. And if you go to the venue, then you bring the voting form. And if you use proxy, if you come by proxy, you need a proxy letter. So please make sure that you bring it if you vote as proxy. And if you vote beforehand, there are 2 or 3 ways to do so. The first one is mailing. So you take out the part of the voting form and mail it. The second option is internet. So there are 2 ways, like a smart exercise, and also you enter into a enter your voting code and password. In case of institutional investor, it is possible to use the platform for institutional investors. So, and I think all the institutional investors are more familiar with how to do this than us. So, let's take a look. First is exercise by mail. I'm repeating myself. So you cut out this unnecessary portion and you mail it, post it. And here, if you don't put circles on this vote, so that means this is considered that you voted for the company's proposal and against the shareholder proposal. So we would like you to vote for the shareholder's proposal. So please make sure that you fill these in. So don't cast an empty vote, like empty sheet. Make sure that you vote for the shareholder proposals. So yeah, maybe this kind of you may think that it is not appropriate to consider blank vote as the vote for the shareholders, the company's proposal, but there are some court cases for that. So yeah, there is the only way is to show that you are for shareholder proposal is to express. So, and if you want to vote against the company proposal and then for the shareholder proposal, you can do so by marking as you see on this slide. And next one, this is a smart exercise. And you go to the QR code on the corner of this voting form, and then you scan this, and you can go to the site, and then you click like a go to exercising voting right. So you go to the screen shown at the bottom, left bottom. So this is kind of a this system leads you to like a voting in kind of favor of the company's proposals. So so if you click the form sorry. Excuse me. So OS's proposals are not like in conflict with the company's proposals against the company's proposal of the surplus appropriation of the surplus. But if you want to vote for, say, company's proposal concerning the appropriation of the surplus, and then you click the button to vote all for the company's proposal, and that means like you are led to voting against the OS's proposal. So make sure that you don't click the upper button, which is for all the company's proposals, but make sure that you click the lower button, which says you individually indicate your voting for each individual proposal. So it's a bit tricky, but please make sure you don't press the top button, but the bottom button to vote for individual proposal. And next is exercise by entering vote code and password. Basically, it's the same. On the convocation notice, you see here. So this HTTPS www.web54.net. If you access this website, then you can jump to the voting right exercise website. And you need to enter voting code and password. So that is not a very difficult operation. So check your voting code and password and enter them. And then you can jump to the voting webpage. The similar thing as the one before. So if you vote uniformly for the company's proposal, that means you will automatically navigate it to the website that you vote for all the company's proposal and then against all the OASIS proposal. So don't do that. So please make sure that you choose to vote individual proposal, vote for or against the individual proposal, and then after you go to that website, so you vote against the company's proposal and vote for OASIS proposal. That's what we would like you to do. So that is how you can vote. So I appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
I'm really sorry we're here. I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry it was necessary to come to this. I think, I wish, I hoped, I hope that the executives, that the current board would understand the need for their help. For help. I think I think their rejection, their complete rejection, their lack of engagement, their kind of creating these, false narrative of these great directives, them saying they're doing everything great, they're trying to hide behind ESG, they're an ESG company, as if you can't have ESG and growth and profitability. I think their whole approach here just simply demonstrates that without help, they're not going to be able to grow and be the leader they can be. I wish it was otherwise, but it's apparent to me, it's clear to me that that's not the case. It's clear to me they need this help. I think it's clear to everybody here at this stage, hopefully, that it is clear they need this help, and these are the best people to do that. These directors all address different issues the company needs. Lanchi, you, Martha, Yanis, and Anya all address each specific skill set the company can use to win. How do we know? We've seen other companies do the same thing. We've seen other companies win. We see the whole segment, the whole area growing. We see more people buying these things. As President Hasebe told me, he told me that more men are wearing makeup than ever before. More men are using moisturizer than ever before. More men are using facial products than ever before. Biore is a leader in that. That's true. Great. Let's get it to them. Let's bring it to them. Let's let the company succeed in all those fields. Let's help Kao win. I think it's clear by the fact that President Hasebe has not been able to find the time to meet with me, except for one meeting. He's finding the time to run around and meet with domestic asset managers to try to convince them that this is a battle between ESG and growth or profitability. It's not. You could have both. He's running around and spending time meeting domestic asset managers saying this is hostile. This is not. These are all additive. He's running around and saying this is, it's my company and nobody else should have a say here. It's not. It's all of your companies. It's all of the employees' companies. It's the customers. It's everybody's company. It's not just President Hasebe's company. The point here is that the stakes are profitability. Yes, they can be shared with the 34,000 employees. The stakes here are the fact that Japan can have a global leader. The stakes here are enhanced profitability for, yes, they can be shared with the shareholders as well. The stakes here are a better counterpart for all their customers and all their small and medium-sized businesses and all the large businesses and all their suppliers and everybody else. So please, help us, help the directors, and let's all together work together to create a better Kao. Thank you very much for coming.